Today's video is brought to you by Prize Picks, America's #1 sports app. And when you use my code right now, HMA, they'll put $50 in your account when you put a $5 lineup down. Hard to beat that. They've got baseball, basketball, heck, they've even got the seasonal picks up here for the NFL season. Terms and conditions do apply. Please do remember to gamble responsibly. Hello and welcome to the Hawks Nest live stream show. My name is Brandon Kane, and I do appreciate you for tuning on in. I do. Hope you guys are having a good Wednesday, getting through this week quickly, speedily. Get on into the weekend. Go enjoy this summer, as it has been a wonderful one so far. And we have the Seattle Seahawks finally in full training camp swing. We got everything going on here. They're just about to the point where you're going to get the full pads a popping here pretty soon. But everything's kind of up and running now. And we've got actually some real news worthy of discussing as far as the ongoings in training camp. And so far, I think as an overall sentiment here, before we get to kind of some of the individual items, everything has been very positive. I think it is sometimes a hard thing for somebody like me that has to sometimes try to look for the stuff that's actually honest to God stories and stuff that's worthy of talking about with you guys. And that a lot of that is sometimes from tumultuous nature of teams or from things being out of whack a little bit. But I think before we get to actually what we're seeing here on a big picture item with Seattle, you got to just stand back and acknowledge and really, again, give them another lauding, give them another clap. I'm not trying to be a meat writer for the organization here, but you just have to enjoy the fact that this team has kept the health situation in a good place. There's been no off-the-field drama. We're not hearing about this or that. There's no contractual squabbles within there as well. Everything is where you want it to be, because when that stuff comes up, it can start to set a tone for the season. It can set things off track. You want to have all that business done and taken care of. And because of that, it's just kind of been business as usual here in training camp, where everybody's going about their business. There's a workman-like kind of application applied to this group that you're hearing talked about by guys like Brady Henderson when they're trying to kind of compare this to the 2013 team coming back when they did, and going, boy, it does seem like a team that just, they're locked in, they're ready to go, they're playing, they're practicing at a high level. We got the Hard Knocks crew out there. So we'll get into some of the items that are going on here with training camp. Before we get to that, we do got some news here out along the NFL landscape of things that I think is worthy of discussing. And first up, the injury situation, which is beginning to strike. And this is the unfortunate time of year where you're holding your breath every day. You just don't want to see the headline. You don't want to have the thing pop up of this guy goes down, that guy goes down. And boy, today was a sobering reminder of that. The New Orleans Saints are a team that a lot of people feel like is going to go out there and really cook up that division. It's an open division, let's face it. It's anybody's division, let's face it. And they're going to lose a very important young player now for the year to a torn ACL in Brian Brees, who's maybe the most important defensive lineman on that team, outside even of Young, for what he brings to the table there. And that's a big loss for them. And especially for a team that needs every last little bit that they can get, you lose these kind of major injuries, and that's huge. The substation is already making those little clicking noises that electricity makes when it's, firing. It's doing that on the side. Ricky Pearsall's got something going on with his knee. What's going on with his knee? Don't know, but it does sound like it's related to the PCL injury he's had prior. The knee's been problematic prior. It sounds like kind of all options are on the table at this point for the 49ers, and this is one where they are definitely sitting there shaking their head, no doubt about this one, because of the fact that it's not a deep receiving core. It's a receiving core that can have some strength, and it's a receiving core that can be doing some damage. If guys can be able to fit into their real desired type roles that you'd like to fit them into, like Evans be your X, Dejon Stribling able to fill in a little bit there for him, but you can kind of move Stribling all the way around, let him be a little bit more of your yak guy. Pearsall could be more of your pure kind of slot dude and where you have him operating from. But if he's out, it sort of throws things a little bit out of whack, because now you're talking about going to guys like Jacob Cowling, remembering there is, maybe they go and grab Debo too at this point, but there is no more of a Jennings. Brandon Ayuk's not going to be in there anymore to call upon. You just don't have any of that depth you maybe once did to be able to kind of work around this. So something worth monitoring. And then the Cincinnati Bengals with Shamar Stewart. Boy, a very ugly looking injury out there at training camp for Shamar, where his leg looks like it did this thing, or that's the knee right there. And it bends that way. Yeah, it did not look good. He was carted off the field as well in addition to that. So some injuries striking up. Hold your breath. You don't want to see it. You hope everything goes good. You want these guys practicing at both an intense level, but also taking care of themselves. And boy, that's a fine line to try to have to walk at times when it comes down like that. Let's get to a little bit of news that happened yesterday again before we kind of get to kind of some of the training camp stuff, because this is just stuff that I'm wanting to discuss that has popped up here. And first things first here, we've got news of Mr. Jalen Carter, the man that I once compared to Cortez Kennedy, is going to sign a 4-year contract extension worth up to $160 million. The Rosenhaus crew still getting it done out here deep in the game. He'll now be under contract through 2031. So a lot of you reacted to me and said, oh, what does this mean for Byron Murphy? And what's this going to mean for how this is going to go and that's going to go? And yes, there is some subtle impact here on the Murphy negotiations down the line. Of course, right now, Murphy can't negotiate. He has to get past 3 years into the sport to be able to then get a new contract. Murphy, Jalen's a year ahead of him, so he's able to get this done. Let's keep a couple of things that are very important in this deal at the forefront. Number one, the Eagles have very likely done what we did with JSN on that deal, which is you're taking the extension, but you're putting it on top of what's really remaining on his rookie deal. In Jalen Carter's case, 2 years remaining on his rookie deal. You slap those extra years on top. You bump a bunch of the money up on the back end. His agents, being the Rosenhaus, can come back and say we're getting $40 million per year, but it's all with a little bit of a, yeah, but this is a 5-6 year contract we're talking about here. So before you go, well, he's making this amount of money and they just blew the bank for him, there's the finer tuned details of these numbers are going to matter, because when you get into the negotiations with the other player, being Byron Murphy, and you go, okay, you got 2 years left, we can kind of accommodate a deal like that. And like I said at the time with the JSN deal, when you're structuring it like that and you're essentially putting the real hit off 2 years until the hit actually comes, like here's their average per year, top of the market money, but it's 2 years down the line before it really kind of starts to hit. Well, that makes the deal a little bit different than just purely looking at it and saying he's being paid at the top of the market. So if you hear somebody speaking about this in the Carter terms, you got to kind of go, hold on, pop the brakes on that. And then the last layer, of course, being that the Eagles are the most flagrant, absolutely over-the-top organization in the sport when it comes to using void years. They have so much void year money buried for about 10 years down the line at this point. And if you don't think that there's going to be about 30 milli, 40 milli on this Jalen Carter deal in void year money, you're kidding yourself. So it's also a part of the Eagles getting this done to consider, in that, okay, this is not just purely the guy got a 3-year extension at this price. There's some little bit of extras to this that we got to consider versus just thinking, okay, now this means Murphy's getting 40 million per. And now how are we going to do this? How are we going to afford everybody, especially with some of the extensions that are going to be coming down the line here soon? So worthy of note there. I will also say an interesting deal here where you had the Eagles tacitly looking like they were sort of kind of dangling Jalen Carter out this offseason for a potential trade. And now you come back around to give me an extension. And I will say as well, very surprising when you consider that he has not come forward as a run defender. There are still times where he can get blocked up in the run game. He's not well graded there. He still misses tackles going back to college in the run game, where he might be in position to make the tackle, loses the tackle. Phenomenal pass rusher and a guy that can occasionally wreck the game and take over things, no doubt about that. But they're paying a price here for a guy that's not yet proven to be well-rounded. And I would say that the questions about motor and engine still do remain with Jalen Carter here that we had with him coming out of college. The guy that could not get through his pro day at Georgia, I think we still do. It's part of that whole lack of defending the run. If you look at it, the Eagles are putting him a lot of times in positions to rush the passer. They're trying to negate and limit down the number of snaps he has to deal with as a run defender to try to protect him for what they know is a deficiency in his game. So a very strange contract in certain terms for me with the Eagles, willing to break the bank. But again, if they're just burying all of this into void year money, well, okay. If you're willing to just go to crazy town to that degree, you just kind of shake your head at it and you go, yeah, I'm not looking to try to replicate that. And then we got another cautionary tale popping up today. And this was another one that had people asking me about this one yesterday. And I understand completely being inquisitive about it, because why not? And that is Vita Vea. And interestingly enough, you have Vita Vea request a trade yesterday. And then today, boy, what a coincidence. He's just suddenly the back's acting up. You know, it's just getting a little bit of contract tightness back there. Got a little bit of dollar bill spasm. You know what I mean, Coach? So he's asked for a trade, and this is a shocker to me. I, of course, had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as a team that um, would you would be in the contention in that division this year. You've got Todd Bowles there is fighting for his coaching life. You know, he may have to make the playoffs or he's out this year. They're not in a position at this point to lose a guy like Vita Vea and still believe that they can really, I think, push in that same kind of way. They don't have a replacement for Vita Vea on the roster, which makes me think a lot of this situation will probably just come down to, in my opinion, they probably just get the deal done with him. I can't see how, from a Tampa Bay perspective on this, you move him and essentially at that point are almost kind of pivoting off of this year. I don't know how you look at Todd Bowles at that point. I mean, Vita is a very important defensive lineman on that team for what he does in stopping the run and still bringing pass rush as a really good nose tackle. Many have tried to connect here to Seattle or to even the Rams. I think they're the betting favorite to potentially land him right now. Don't worry about that. That's not happening. Rams are not going to get him, and we're not going to get him. I love the story of it, and this is a frustrating one from my perspective because how many players do we have throughout the NFL who are on the move to a given place? I want to go back home, and going back home is such a draw aspect to where they end up landing. And you have us in Seattle, who's not really always at the forefront having a lot of guys. We're not exactly producing Florida players out here by the bundles to the NFL level, that is. And so you rarely get yourself in a position of actually having a player who would love the team and would love to come back home and, you know, kind of like a Cooper Kupp thing, where Cooper Kupp came back here and you paid him some money, but was maybe the fact that this was his home state, a little bit of a draw to a degree, maybe just a bit. And so in Vita, you have a guy that played the University of Washington, who's already, I think, subtly indicated in the background they'd like to stay out on the West Coast. So again, I can see all the connection between all of you thinking about this, but you're just not going to do it because you're not in a position to really have a way to fit him in right. You bring him in, you're pushing snap counts away from probably a Byron Murphy or Leonard Williams. And Leonard Williams is right on the edge of probably, in a second, we'll talk about it, getting a contract extension. You have Riley Mills, who's been maybe one of the highest performing defensive linemen so far early on in training camp. Living in the backfield is words we're hearing about with Riley Mills so far. And that was just building off of what we're hearing from with OTA, where there's one play in OTAs reportedly bent Anthony Bradford backwards. And so, you know, there just isn't the spot to put him in there. And there's only so many snaps that are going to go around. And while it would be great to put a super defensive tackle team together of guys that play basically 20 snaps a game, it just doesn't work out in practicality. Byron Murphy's trying to go out there this year and solidify himself into getting Jalen Carter money. Leonard Williams is going to make that contract this year. Riley Mills is a guy that's cheap right now, and you'd like to get some cheap performance where you can, because that's the other aspect about Vita Vea is that you're trading for him, you're giving up the draft capital, and then you're paying him. For a guy that's 31 years old, which isn't extremely old, especially for defensive tackles like his kind that are highly drafted guys, kind of physical freak shows. But with all that said, it just doesn't align up to where you've got the money that you want to do this on this place. You've already got your positions well allocated and situated. You're 4 stacked deep there right now. And it's one of your deepest positions on your team and strongest positions on your team. You just don't need to necessarily reinforce this thing. Better to wait than make that move. We're trying to shoot, and we have this really great shot that we can take with draft capital, the salary cap space that we still have in tow, and you can make that one big swing. This would not be the one big swing to me. And I keep coming back around to the time of really right now is not the time to really make the big swing as much as it is to let this thing kind of situate as far as the NFL season is concerned. So I get the interest, understand why people were looking at him, but it's just not really a possibility there on that one. It just isn't happening. Let's get into a little bit of discussion on some of the stuff going down with training camp and, you know, some of the things that we're hearing here from training camp. First off, some really good returns on what we're hearing about Fleury. All of us are very interested in wondering about, you know, what's going on with him and how is he taking? How is the acclimation to this offense? What's changing? What's new? I thought Gray Zabel had some interesting comments on it where he went on to 710 and he was asked about Fleury, and he talked about the fact that he sees the game different. And smartly enough, Brock Heward kind of pressed him a little bit on what he meant by that. So check out this soundbite.
Standing back behind a play, he just sees the defensive front, linebackers coverages, all that just a little bit differently, and he sees things happening before it happens, and he allows Sam and those guys to play free, but also have a vision of how he wants us to play. And it's one of those deals where he gives us answers to a test when we don't even know the question's going to be there. So it's remarkable what he's done just in the short time he's been here, and we're excited because I feel like we're just at the tip of the iceberg right now. And as we grow and get to know each other and develop and connect and bond, it's gonna be a fun season for sure.
So a pretty good praise for a guy who has not yet called the play, to say that he sees things, he's seeing answers before we can even think to have the questions. These are certainly the things you'd want to hear about your players talking about their coach. But I also think it's always been said that you can't really fool players. You can't trick them. And that if you aren't the goods, they're going to know it. And certainly they're not going to speak up to it. I mean, Zabel's the kind of guy who's never going to say necessarily a bad word. Doesn't strike me as that, especially of a coach. But very good to hear nonetheless that the early returns seem to be that this guy, very detail driven. He's on it. He seems to be fully in a position at this point where there's not, is he ready for this? Is he not? He seems completely ready for this. And we won't know until we see the play calling, of course, with this, but just good to hear some of the initial look-see from the players has been good on that front of it. Another one of the hot topic items out there this year coming into training camp was Jadarian Price. How ready would he be? Can he come here and be ready to take over for Charbonnet, who started on the PUP list? And there was some word yesterday that maybe Seahawks would hope to get Charbonnet active around week one-ish. I think that's a little aggressive, and they tend to be a little bit tentative with stuff. But with that said, we're going to need him to go and need to go early. And he has been really good, it sounds like, in training camp. The stop and start, speed, the vision, some of those things that you saw from him on tape that stood out with Notre Dame are coming into bloom, and even stuff that isn't necessarily what we thought was going to be at the forefront of some of his skill set is coming into bloom. My guy's actually catching the ball. Here you got him running on a wheel route here, catching in the back of the end zone over the top. Nice throw here from Jalen Milroe. Puts it right out in front. Little wobbly there. That's okay. Jalen's not going to have perfect spirals with that arm. Just it doesn't, not with the way it comes out. Nice little catch there. We got Ernest Jones talking about him getting him and his impressions a little bit here of Jadarian.
He's good. He's good, man. Mature for his age, you could tell. You don't get too many words out of him, but he's working. He got me today, man. Had a hell of a route on me today. So he's good, man. I think he's going to help us. He's doing everything right, and he's got a great group of backs in front of him that's kind of teaching him the way.
So that catch I showed you a second ago, this one right here, that's not on Ernest Jones. So that's a different whole play of him making another catch. And by all accounts on what we're hearing from Jadarian is that he's catching the ball smoothly, that this is not looking like a deficiency in his game, and that this is something that's going to be a part of the offense too. You can see that they're already, with how much they're utilizing him with this, they're leaning into it, that this is going to be a part of what they want to do this year. And I think it's cool to see, because I think a lot of last year I was sitting back there kind of frustrated at times because Sam and the offense would forget about hitting the backs out of the backfield. Get so concentrated on getting the ball down the field and letting the big dog hunt that you weren't getting back and just taking the simple, easy checkdowns and taking the 5, 6, 7 yards that were just freebie yards because the coverage would just drop to depth. You'd have 7 guys roll back at times, and then especially against like a Rams team, they're going to just flow with some depth back, leaving those throws into the flat open, leaving that 7, 8 yard play open. They're just essentially telling you, we don't think you're going to actually call the play. And the fact that he's done this on 2 wheel routes, by the way, 2 of these big plays we've seen in camp, wheel routes are one of those fun routes where it's almost like the equivalent of a sluggo route for a receiver, where you're setting the route up to one way for the defender. You're trying to catch them aggressive short, aggressive squeezing and cinching down on the short routes, and then you wind it deep. And a little bit of pump action on the out route too from the quarterback and kind of cinch it. But very cool that they're attempting to get him acclimated and that he's fit to it really well. And this is going to be a part of the offense. We'll see how he does as far as pass protection. I think that that's part of one that's going to still be a little bit of a question mark with him.
But even on a drill like this, I think it shows as to why you see the smile on a guy like Ernest Jones's face. This was such a cool post here on Twitter. Twitter's hilarious. Bro cheated and still lost, which was very funny. Because if you watch this drill, this is a drill where you would look at it and you would say, the defender should be able to get his fingers on the player. I shouldn't have him to where he goes untouched. And as you can see to the post, Andrew, good call on Andrew's part on this one, by the way. As you can see that I think it's Drake Thomas starting a little early there. A little early. So it gets a little bit of a cheating start. But what I just talked about, stop and start. 0 to 60 to 0 to 60. One of the places running back skill set wise, that's not one of the more one of the more spots about skills within the running backs that we would talk about. Yes. Does he got quickness? Has he got a great juke move? Can he spin? What's his stiff arm? How's his burst? But the ability to go stop, back to full speed, to stop, along with when you pair it with his balance, which is going to be tremendous. If he's going to be a really good back in this league, these are going to be the things that really help to set him apart. But pretty crazy here. Think about this. You're cut off the hash mark here. You're to a very short section of the field. I mean, you're very much to almost a corridor kind of space here. It's very hard for the linebacker to not at least get some hands on you. He's not tackling him here, but he's supposed to at least get you can see they're stretching at the end and can't quite get his hands on him. I think he got a little bit shocked by how fast Jadarian got on top of him there just a little bit. But a cool little drill. And I think one that kind of shows off some of that. I can round that corner, get right up to speed, and go from stop to getting up to full speed quick. I think you're going to feel for that from Jadarian Price, and the early returns from Jadarian have been really good. Very encouraging from what we're hearing about him. We've also got some nice catching going on here early on. We got Cooper Kupp 2 days ago here with a beautiful throw from Sam Darnold. A little bit of a one-hander there, falling down. How about that from Cooper, huh? Not too bad. He's on 7-on-7, by the way. People are giving Job a hard time. He's going to be in both of these two cut-ups. But they're still in these shells. They're not making plays on balls. You know what I mean? Like, it is still a good throw. He's still fitting it into what looks like cover 2 here, where Love's coming over the top. So you got the press. This is sort of old school cover 2, where you're pressing up at the line of scrimmage, and then you're bringing the safety over the top. And then if the quarterback can fit the hole shot in, which is you're trying to fit it into the honey hole with a little bit of velocity on it. That's why it's coming down with some heat, because you got to get it in there before the safety can close over the top. But beautiful catch from Cooper Kupp. Still got something left in the tank. I've been telling you guys that throughout this offseason. I think that he's just there to be some elder statesman coach on the field type is completely ridiculous. This guy's still got a lot to give as far as I think as a pass catcher. It doesn't mean he's going to be back to Triple Crown Cup, but it does mean that he can be tremendously efficient in what he brings, and still a guy that can take the top off. Because keep in mind here, this isn't him operating out of the slot. This is Cooper Kupp on the outside, out of press coverage, creating separation. And beautiful throw by Sam as well. Early returns from Sam have been that he looks great, confident, everything that we'd hope from him. We also had a nice little Shaheed catch here too, which is, again, fortunately on Mr. Job once again here. But you can see with Job, he's not jumping on this play. So I think they've been told right now not to jump. So is that just him trying to trail and be in good position? And, Sam knows it so he can kind of fit the ball in. Yeah. But as well, it's a beautiful throw by Sam. And you tell me that you need an indicator that the chemistry has gotten better between Shaheed and Sam, and these guys are getting more lockstep. Looks pretty lockstep to me here. Right on time, right on the spot. And, he's kind of looping that ball in there. It's not a super high leverage throw, but it's not just a simple easy peasy throw either. So a couple good catches. Jadarian's looking good, which is cool to see. We got some, again, the catch here, another grab with him down the line here with Drake Thomas. See him looking around, reaching with his hands out there. Look at those thighs, dude. Muscles can look weird when they're in athletic movement. Look at that right leg thigh. You got Thomas going, man, you busted me up on the drills. Now you're running the go route on me, Jadarian. Can you hold up today, Brooke? Huh? Can Can you not get me cut today? I just got my contract extension done. Please? Got a little bit of, as I said, Riley Mills out there playing well early on. He also out there on kickoffs, which was interesting to see. And before you kind of wonder about that, and this is one of the places that Jay Harbaugh was fantastic at sort of finding new ways to modernize within these rules in your approach. And the old school way would have been that you wanted light guys. You wouldn't have wanted to go heavier than a strong safety on kickoff coverage or a linebacker on kickoff coverage back in the past because of the fact that you need those guys to get so far up the football field. With the new kickoff rules, though, you've moved up where you're kicking off from. And what this then means is that the guys that have to travel down to the ball carrier have to travel less a distance. And so Jay had the wonderful idea last year of, what if I put a defensive lineman going down there? Because if I give a guy 7 yards of up to full speed, the guy's going to be blocking him is not going to be an offensive lineman. Not going to be a center, guard, tackle. No. It's going to be a guy that's probably lighter than him by 50 to 75 pounds. And he'll just run over that guy. And so if you remember this, I think Brandon Peely had a forced fumble last year. Our nose tackle coming down, just raking it free as he's coming down full speed because nobody's going to want to get in front of that train. He gets a full speed and you're going to stand in front of him at 180 pounds soaking wet. Like you're the fourth cornerback on the roster. You're like, I got to block the nose tackle on kickoff. Mike Morris had a couple of plays down the field using this. So when you see Riley Mills there lined up as a kickoff guy, don't throw that out the window, man. That might be brought into play here. That might just come up and make itself present. So kind of cool. And one of those ways where Jay's looking to chase the edges as he can there on special teams, which is just what you want when you're trying to build the best special teams unit once again in all the NFL. As far as bummer news, our guy, fan favorite, once a former 7th round steal and thought by many of us, Kenny McIntosh, is unfortunately released this week. And this is one where, not shocking, I think saw a lot of the offseason videos coming out with him, and it still looked like he was, despite the fact that it was almost had been a year, was still working through even just getting up to kind of the full speed and being able to go hard. It was a lot of like seemingly still small motion stuff that he was trying to strengthen up his leg in. And you hope for the best for this kid because it's just a tough luck. He had injury in college. He's had injuries in his first 2 years. When he's run the rock, when he's had the opportunities here, he's looked dynamic. He's looked like a guy that's got plenty of quickness, plenty of burst, maybe not the speed. And that's the two reasons he really dropped, in my opinion, when you look at this in retrospect, is that he wasn't a guy that had the 220, 215 pounds of size, but would kind of run like he was a guy like that at times. And then had the injury history a little bit, and then was kind of missing some of the speed. And so you put it all together, and it's why a guy like that drops into the 7th round, and why you're willing to take a risk on a guy like that in the 7th round versus earlier days. And that's what day 3 should be for sometimes. You're going to look for certainty. You're going to look for special teams guys that can help out there, but you're taking swings and you're looking at guys that you hope can, even if you're very sober about the fact this guy's not long to last, like probably is not likely to hold up, the talent's so good and true, you got to take those occasional swings because football is a funny sport. And the doctors will tell you, and there's so many of these stories of this guy will never do this again. This will never occur again. This guy will never be what he was once again, or it's only a matter of time before that ticking time bomb knee explodes. But, for every one of those stories that does prove out to be true, there is the Drew Breeses of the world who goes to Miami as a free agent. Miami doctors go, they look at his arm and they're like, oh my God, we can't sign him. And then he goes, I don't know why they had British accents, but they use British doctors in Miami. Anyway, he goes to New Orleans instead. The rest is history, right? Becomes a Hall of Famer there. And so same thing true with Washington. I love that tight end out of Pittsburgh coming out of the draft. Couldn't understand. Why is this guy falling in the draft? He blocks like a tackle. He's 6'7" and he can catch the ball. He may not be like the fastest guy, but he's got enough. Like there's plenty there. He's a unique kind of beast. Why is he dropping? Well, you hear the reports, ticking time bomb knee. Steelers, who have shown some willingness to take risks on guys like this throughout the years here recently, and have had it turn against them at times. You got the kid out of Washington that they got who had the ACL problems coming out. That was probably why we were dissuaded from looking at him. Fatanu, I believe, was one of those guys recently They took Peyton Wilson, who's literally missing an ACL right now, but he's out there, played at a high level in his first year. Does not have an ACL in his leg. I'm not overstating that. That's not a joke. Steelers still drafted him. So they've taken these risks, and it's paid off in their favor. And sometimes it's worthwhile when the squeeze is worth the juice, when the talent is just that good. And I like that approach by front offices, especially when you're talking about not having to pick them up in the prime territory of first round or day 2. That's a whole different ball of wax. But maybe Kenny comes back around on this one. You needed the healthy backs in camp here to go through, and you just couldn't afford to wait any longer. And I think there's also a little bit of acknowledgement here that maybe Kenny's not going to be able to get fully really back to his former self on that. And that just, you got to do some of the advanced math on this, as unfortunate as that can be. So hopefully Kenny is able to find a landing spot somewhere, but that has been the only real, to me, significant injury news. We've got no Torrey Horton on the PUP. He's been out there and rocking it. We had 2 days ago, Bud Clark get a tip pick 6 interception. One of the things that I've talked about with Bud Clark to look for, and one of the things that is, it's almost the unexplainable at times. There's things in football that you can see happen with players that are like, well, this skill set and operating in this offense in this manner goes and gets this done, and it all connects together like a Lego. And then there is those players that just have something innately about them that just is part of who they are. And you can call it instincts, you can call it anticipation, you can call it awareness in space. To me, it's sometimes a little undefinable. But there are players in football on the defensive side of the ball that will sometimes just have a nose for the football. That's why that whole cliche term was invented in the first place. How does he always around the ball? Always around the ball. Some of it's being just a good player, and I said awareness. Some of it's just you just innately are always around it. Well, a guy in Bud Clark, it is no surprise to me, and will be no surprise to anybody that's been listening to this channel here throughout the scouting process about this one part that stood out in his game, being that he has a nose for the ball. The ball just finds him. And if this guy's on the field, whether in his rookie year or whether this is in year 3, he's going to find his share of picks. There's going to be some discussions about where has the tackling come along? Is he getting wrapped and rolling in that way? But he's going to find his share of picks. And so him coming away with a pick 6 here in practice a couple days already this young in his career, no surprise for me. Look at Bud Clark as being that kind of dude long term, and that's going to be such a helpful addition to a defense that's going to a lot of times be able to play from ahead. I've said it's going to be that where these interceptions for a guy like Bud Clark come into play is that his instincts start to lock in. The opposing offense gets a little too pass happy, let's say, from playing from behind, because we get a little bit of a lead like we did last year. That's kind of the formula that you're hopefully applying. And then as you get that lead, he can come in and bring in that coffin nail, bring in that final shot of an interception to close the books and allow your offense to bleed out the rest of the clock. So be an interesting thing to see if that shows up as well, but cool that Bud Clark's also out there getting it done. According to Albert Breer, when he was here for his couple of days of camp, he does all of his camp visits here as a national media reporter. He really felt like Anthony Bradford was the best lineman that he saw, and that Bradford was out there handling business. And he got ribbed by Brock and Salk for this a little bit on the radio show, but very cool nonetheless that he's out there seemingly understanding the opportunity at hand. Part of the thing I say that these guys are just, everyone's, towing the line, doing the things you'd want them to do. And it sounds so easy here, but it's so hard, I think, to get a whole locker room of all these players in lockstep in this manner. And in a guy in Anthony Bradford, you would like to be able to sit him down early in an offseason if you are his people, if you are representatives, or if you're his family, and you would say to him, look, cut the whole noise out. Doesn't matter what online's saying about anything. The league's going to always have a different opinion by what online's being said. And there's plenty of people that will understand your value as you become a free agent next year. But you're getting better and better and better, and you're doing a good job of it. Now, let's really ignite this. Let's really bring this into full turn. Let's round ourselves into the final player we're going to be in this league. Then that form, and that's going to be a really good player. And we're going to get into the consistency, and I'm going to work out and have the off season of my life. As much of just if you need any other reason, I have got a monster contract sitting in front of me. Damian Lewis a couple of years ago came into his free agent year, and I don't think anybody out there thought he was going to be worth $13 million per year. Now, Damian probably had done a little bit more than Bradford's done at this point in time of his career to, solidify his standing as a good free agent at that time. But that was a lot of money. And that's what a final good year can do for you. And I'm sure Bradford's had these people in his ear telling him that. And if this guy can come in and give you that final year here of his rookie year and the best performance that we've seen in Bradford, that the consistency level, that the whiffs get to be reduced a little bit, that would be a phenomenal addition to an offensive line that already has the continuity factor in play, that already has now started the growing star power at play with some of what you're getting from some of the other parts and how they're going. That would be phenomenal to see if it can be that way. And so good to hear that Bradford's coming in locked and loaded and ready to go in his final year. Sounds like the edge rushers have been looking good so far too. Everybody's on point there. And really, there's not a lot extra here to report about the team and what's going on. Guys are going through the business. Everybody's working hard, it sounds like. McDonald sounds pretty happy with what's playing out. I would expect we're going to get a couple of contract extensions here sooner than later. It just feels like the Devin Witherspoon thing is this close. You've got him out there practicing all the way, 100%. Feels very close to going down with that. Leonard Williams was asked yesterday about his contract extension. And if you kind of listen to what he's saying and you try to kind of, I'm reading into it a little bit. That's my job here. I were to read into what he was saying, it's that contract negotiations are ongoing and that we're hearing even in the background that something may be getting closer and closer to coming into play. I think John would love to set the stage for this next offseason to where he can have the Leonard Williams extension done and once again go into the next offseason, even into a better position really by the free agents that you might lose, So, that he can minimize the free agents in the next offseason, doesn't have to be having to worry about any hold over a barrel or somebody's, this guy's going to be given a record-breaking contract on the free agent market if you don't get him signed, that he doesn't have to kind of be thinking about that anymore in the back of his mind. And I think that is where we kind of find, John trying to do here with this Williams extension, because that's kind of that last domino in. The next year you got the Murphy extension you want to get done. A couple other contracts that you'll be looking at, including a Bradford or a Jason Myers, but just nothing that you lose a Leonard Williams next year or something like that. That would hurt. That would definitely really, really hurt. You don't want to have to face that situation, but I don't think we're going to have to. I think the contract's going to get done. You guys let me know, though, what you guys think here today about going on. If you've got any stuff that you guys have heard about coming out of training camp or anything you want to, maybe discuss here, if you want to get a little bit more into the Vita Vea discussion. But I think that's pretty much a no-go territory. I certainly think that you would reach out to the Bucs about what the cost would be. John's going to be in on it. So if you hear rumors about Seattle being somehow kind of quasi slightly connected, you might hear that because John's always going to call. He's going to kick the tires, man. He's going to smell the leather. Yeah. He's going to play at the fuzzy dice on the rearview mirror. You kids don't know about fuzzy dice. You don't know about fuzzy dice, okay? But he's got to do all these. He's just kind of feeling the waters out a little bit. Are the waters warm? Maybe I'll want to dive in. I've got 12 draft picks next year. Maybe I want to throw a few of those to the wind. I don't know. What if I trade for Vita and I say no extension this year and no franchise tag? Come home. I don't think it's going to play out like that, but one can dream. One can dream. I want to thank, if I may be able to, thank the sponsor of the show. Oh my goodness, lost my deal here. Sponsor of the show is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 sports app running in the game today. They are the best, in my opinion. You get so many options to pick from with Prize Picks. You've got, of course, baseball going in full swing. We're all waiting here for the Mariners to get this thing clicked in here at some point or another. Hopefully, it is going slow in that regard of things. But hey, we are hoping or expecting here this thing is going to click in here at some point. There is a new user offer right now. New user offer with HMA. When you do a sign up, you'll get 150 in bonus lineups with your first $5 lineup. So it's been 50. Now it's 150. 150. You click that my code below there in the description section, or use my code HMA, and they will match up to $150 on a $5 lineup. So 145 in your pocket for $5. That ain't a bad deal. Get on right now. Maybe hopefully the Mariners will start getting hot. Take advantage of that. You got the seasonal picks as well. I've been pointing to. I've been talking to Jadarian Price on this. I've got him over the 750 they've got right now listed on the Price Pick site for that. I think that's an easy pick there. Jackson Smith over 1,324 receiving yards. Jacoby Myers over 750 receiving yards there down with Jacksonville's. I think he's going to be the #1 target down there. We're going to go through some more of the picks here as we get closer. So you're going to want to have that 140 in your account so we can go out there and win yourself some money. We've also got even the team picks. You can just pick the games themselves in season as that comes up. Those are always some good selections as well there. So take advantage today. Terms and conditions do apply. Please do see their site for detail. And yes, I do know in the state of Washington, there are some limitations as the state's trying to figure out how to tax this thing. But if you are in a casino in the state of Washington, you can use the app in full. Go crazy with it. Have fun. So thank you to Prize Picks for sponsoring the show. Thank you guys for using the code. And again, just down in the description section below, you can click right on that link. Click on that link. It'll take you right there and put that $5 lineup down and get $150 the $5 lineup. Not too shabby. All right, so let's see what you guys are at today. Appreciate everybody watching. If you can hit that like button, would really appreciate it. And as well, if you can sub on up if you're not already. We are on the road to 30,000 here, and it would be much appreciated. HHG, thank you for 35 months, 2 years. As a Hawks Nest member. Appreciate you for that. He says, Eagles push the contract out to 2040. I ain't going to be surprised if that's the case. I don't think we've got the details quite yet, but I am not going to be surprised in the least bit. The Eagles are sort of, it's worthy of a discussion at some point or another in itself, but the Eagles are essentially saying it's all about today. When tomorrow comes, tomorrow will come, and we will face that day for what it is. But we're not going to stop this flow. We're not going to stop for right now this run of this year into next year of keeping this thing going. And it's bold on their part. We've not had any other team as kind of a tester team to try to even do this. Like, nobody's had the balls. Nobody's had the idiocracy, you could say, because you could really end up walking into a place where you've given yourself no flexibility and you're staring right down sort of the barrel of just being stuck. A couple injuries here, a couple injuries there, and you're kind of done-ski a little bit. But you got to give them credit, man. They own into the process and they're not deviating, and it's their own way. I guess as an NFL team, you want to try to find your chasing edges, your unique ways that you can go about your business that can separate you from others. And so, maybe this is, the methodology of their approach to getting that done. This is their particular little thing, but I don't think I would like to see it. I don't mind. I don't mind you peppering it in a little bit, and you got to do a little. Everybody's got to do a little bit of void year stuff. Everybody's got to do a little bit of dirt, a little bit of dirty. What do they call it in prison? You're gonna work. You're gonna put in that work. Everybody's got to put a little bit of void work in now as a general manager if you're worth your salt, but you don't go crazy. And the Eagles have gone nuts with it. 206 Remy, thank you for the $2 donation. Jadarian, do you think he'll be the starter? I do think Jadarian Price is going to be the starter early on in the year. I think it's going to be a split backfield as the year goes on and Charbonnet works his way in. I think there'll even be some split early on. And that's why I want to go to, with Jadarian on like Prize Picks, he's put out there for, I think 750 yards, something like that, 725, I think a month ago. But that's where I go like 950 yards, something around that 200 carries, right around 950 to 1,000 yards, Remy. But then you probably end up seeing, between the combination of Wilson and Zach Charbonnet, another probably 200 carries behind them, collectively, another 250 total carries just between those two guys. So, he will be used. He will be technically a starter. I think the days of thinking about these running backs as 300 touch bell cow back types has got to be kind of tossed out the door. It's now more of an assembly, a stable, and you've got to build a strong stable. So he will be, and initially I think he'll be used pretty heavily. But I do think he's going to fit to his role, and they're going to try to keep him, somewhat protected, not overusing him. I mean, that was the whole point is that last year as well, is that they've got this in theory, but then they got to use it in practice last year, where you truly went to a 2-back system with Charbonnet and Walker, and sometimes to the frustration of fans, but ultimately to the greatest of success with the team, that whatever they wanted to squawk about, we should start Charbonnet, we should start Walker, that it was like, no, this is what's best to keep both these guys fresh, to keep the defenses off balance. Both have kind of different styles in what they do, so it makes it a little harder on the defenses. And that approach ended up, not only bearing us out the Super Bowl championship, it lets you have Walker completely fresh by the time he got to the Super Bowl. instead of being blown out like he had been in his first couple of years here. So yes, essentially, yeah, Rami, but with a little bit of the asterisk because it's going to be more of the round 200 touches. It'll be closer to that than the 300. Matthew, thank you for 6 months as a Hawks Nest member. What do you feel is our biggest weakness currently? It's a good question. It's a good question. I will say there's not a lot of weaknesses as it stands right now. Well, I think it gets narrowed down really quickly on this one. You've got the best defense in football that's bringing basically almost everybody back and has plenty of depth at every position. You have an offensive line of all 5 starters and all of the depth with those guys, and a very good performing offensive line. We have a Bradford there that's a weak link, but I don't know that then makes him the greatest weak link of the whole team. A receiving core similarly. Horton's back in the flow, and now you're 4 deep, Bobo 5 deep. You got about 5 guys fighting it out in the Thunderdome for that last receiver spot on the roster. That should bode well to the last receiving spot on the roster being a strong one. And then you got the tight end room, which is like 4 deep, 5 deep. So everything's good there. I would narrow it down to running back. And it's not a weakness that's necessarily a weakness pure. It's just the thing that is most closest to a weakness on the team, because this is a Super Bowl team, Matthew, and a Super Bowl team like that accomplished what they accomplished, bringing everybody back in the fold, is not going to be a team of a weakness here, a weakness there, a weakness everywhere. It's more of like, you got to get out the binoculars, you got to take out the microscope, and you better get in close. So I would say it's running back as much because we don't know Charbonnet's health coming off the ACL and how that'll hold up. Wilson has never been the number 1 guy anywhere. He's been a guy, gets his 400-yard guy a year for Packers, kind of just to spell Josh Jacobs. And Jadarian, I'm hyped on him. I loved it, but he is a rookie, and you're now cutting Kenny McIntosh. That leaves Hololani. And so it does leave you with a running back room that has some talent for sure, but also has some questions and could go sideways if an injury here or an injury there strikes it. So that would be the closest I could come to, but even there, I wouldn't call it a pure weakness, just maybe the biggest weakness, like to your question, just the biggest weakness on the team as a whole. Feed me. Thank you for the $5 donation, brother. Appreciate that. It's good to see you in the house. Marvin Harrison already struggling in camp. I see the same thing with him I saw with DK. He's just in the wrong area, I think. Cover 2 shell hinders what he does well. Good point there on the second part. Very well could be. I hadn't given it a lot of thought here, as it's been such a strange oddity to watch Marvin not quite kind of get things figured out when the talent was so good on tape. I mean, with him coming out of college, it was not a hard evaluation, and it was not his name that was carrying it. I mean, you listen to Ohio State receivers talk about him in comparison to the guys that had come out. They'll all tell you that he was the truth. It has not clicked in. Your points about the coverage in the secondary and the type of coverages and secondaries you get in the NFL versus college being a little different there could be a big part of this. He seems like, too, just a guy that confidence is a big part of being a pro athlete. And it's, I think, rare that these guys get to this level and their confidence gets a little bit shot or shaken. He seems a little bit like at times when you hear him talk and how he carries himself, the confidence does not always seem to be bubbling up, that there's not a lot of that. It almost kind of gets smaller a little bit at times in how you feel there. And I don't know. I have wondered if some of this could be just Marvin needs a change of scenery from Arizona's perspective on this, where it's not working here, but it might work somewhere else. And it's, it should work here. Why isn't it working here from Arizona's perspective? But sometimes you just can't shove the square into the round hole. You gotta take the peg and just go, okay, is what it is. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. He's made a couple catches too in camp there with Arizona, but odd. See what's going on with Marvin as far as that goes, and we'll see if the mentals are there. I will say it definitely felt like in that first Cardinal game against the Seahawks, he had a couple drops in that game. He had the drop where Ernest Jones picked it after it was right in his hands, and he should have caught the ball, but he just, that you felt in that game where you're like, this feels like neck up. This does not feel there's some injury or something hindering him there. And certainly even in that game, he came back later on in the game and got a touchdown catch on Witherspoon. And that's I think probably the maddening thing from Cardinal perspective is that they're looking at it going, we're seeing some stuff with the guy. We're seeing him do some exciting things. It's just it isn't coming forward consistently, despite the fact no longer far from being a rookie now. Randall in the house. Good to see you, Randall. Thank you for the $2 donation. He says, sure feels like Murphy is set to dominate. He looks good, man. Looks like he's worked on that body and he's hungry and it sounds like he's got that fire of, you guys overlooked me last year. Now watch what I do. And this is great for us. Bodes awesomely for us. And the cool part here is that, you're going to reward the guy after 3 years. You're not having not given him an extension, not because you haven't earned it, but just because, we got to wait till 3 years, Byron. So whatever you do performance-wise this year will dictate to us what we're going to be able to pay you. And he's going out there right now like, I'm going to set the league on fire here with this. I'm going to realize my potential. And the thing to consider with this is you had in similar kind of track record with JSN, two guys drafted very similar around each other. JSN fell because of as much injuries, or he would have gone a little higher. Probably would have been a top 10 pick. But you have in these two guys that were really young coming into this league. And they came in this league really young and still performed well early on, but started to give you maybe a thought process of, well, here's where the standard will be at for their play, not taking into account that those young pups, and why I like them so much, those guys that come in at 21 years old, and once they get to be 24, and now they're just starting to walk into their physical prime, they've got some background in the sport. They know what they're doing. They've got a plan of attack. They've advanced their game along a bit. And that's right where Murphy's at. And that same huge jump step forward that you saw from JSN, you might very well see from Murphy this year, because everything's kind of just set up for that same sort of ignition to occur, which I would love to see, man. It would bode very well for our defense, Randall. Good to see you too, brother. Hope you're doing well, man. Thank you for the donation. Phoebe with another $2 dono. Appreciate you doing, Phoebe. He says, Eamon Wari being put in Jamal Adams' role gives PTSD. Well, Jamal was never a slot. So if Jamal came up as a down the box guy, he was going to operate like a, box safety, or he was going to operate like a linebacker. Jamal's the thing with Jamal that was problematic is you brought him here and you played him a lot in cover 2, because that was the year that cover 2 was kind of taking over the league. Fangio was just really coming into vogue, and Seattle was trying to take advantage of that and instituting a lot more cover 2 into what they rolled out. And that was just putting him out in space and coverage where Jamal just couldn't operate. He wasn't comfortable back there. And that's where, with Eamon Wari, you're not putting him in a safety position. You're putting him in cover 2. I mean, he's taking very rare snaps at all at the safety position. It's much more slot corner, and then he's playing some, will linebacker essentially, even some Mike at times. But no, they've got him in the right spot, man. And it is definitely the opposite of what you did with Jamal, where you're taking a guy and you're saying, hey, you're at your best around the line of scrimmage. You're at your best getting downhill, which, was a lot of what Jamal was at his best. And that's why when you put him in cover 2, it's why he's not at his best, because you're getting him further and further and further away from the line of scrimmage in his drops, which just is reducing his effectiveness. But yeah, the Jamal situation is definitely one to learn from in that respect. And good on Jamal. Jamal landed out there with the Minnesota Vikings. That's a hell of a fit between him and Brian Flores. He should be really good in that defense, and you're going to see Flores using him all over the place. It's essentially kind of what they would call at the college level a rover role. It's something between a linebacker and safety. It's kind of a freelancer defender in the defense that gets to be kind of a predator. He gets to be a hunter. And he's less about gap specific at times as much as just see ball, go get ball. You sort of simplified for that particular player. Everybody else might be into more roles and fitting gaps, and he's just able to go out there and run around with his hair on fire. And that's what you got to do with those kind of players. Appreciate you, Femi. Thank you for the dono. See where you guys are at with the chat here today. I figure we won't have a huge turnout with being still people winding up here, but we'll see where you guys are at. If you got a question for me or a comment, or you want me to respond, just as a reminder, please put B Brando Hawks Nest. Any of that I'll respond to. We have a lot of inner discussion though. So if not, I do skip over otherwise. Question, who leads in sacks this year? I'll go with Derek Hall, but I think it's going to be a very close cluster of guys all around that 8 to 10 sack territory. Kendrick's Brendo made a video about our upcoming draft picks and how some sites have us projected 3 third-round picks next year. Do you think it's a mistake on the part of it or something else? Yeah, I think it's a mistake on their part. You've got the 2 third-round picks where you've got the third-round pick for the minority hire and your native third-round pick. I would think, Kendricks, that sounds to me like people are trying to do a little bit of extra advanced math on the free agent losses. And to their point on that, we don't know what the formula is. I know that there's a site out there that'll tell you that Seattle's in lineman for like 1 4th-round pick and 3 5th-round picks, but nobody actually knows what the true formula is. And you lost a lot of free agent losses. So maybe they're just taking those kind of collectively and they're more making it into like, it's going to be a third and this or whatever. That's the only thing I can think as to why they would be doing that way. But we don't have any extra third-round pick that we've made in a trade that I can think of or anything like that. Yes, and Jalen Carter get that extension he got. Brad Murphy can easily get that. He's way above Carter, and he's not even playing his natural position. True. Yeah, I don't think he's going to have any issue matching that deal, to your point. I think that's going to and it's not going to be hard for Seattle to match it at that point if they need to. Talayla, what did you think of Jermod McCoy? Supposedly had to do an additional surgery or something, but heard he was a badass the year prior. You think McCoy ever gets back to that level? I mean, that's the roll of the dice on that, and that's why he went to the 4th round. You have a guy that's got top 10 blue chip talent, and they get to the 4th round, Tulalip. It does mean that the medicals were really unfortunate. As I understand it, he had a plug in his knee, and something with the plug needed to be taken out or replaced, and that's the additional surgery. So it's not. I don't think it's where the surgery has to be like he needs the ACL re-repaired or something like that. That being said, it's probably going to be a little bit of a length of time for recovery, and then you don't know if he's going to be able to get back to full run at that point. Raiders are in a position to take that risk at that time for the upside that could come, and this is a little bit back to that. When do you take the risk? When do you not? I've said you take the risk, you take it day 3. You don't want to be doing it on day 1 or day 2, and that's I think literally why you saw the Raiders. If I'm not mistaken, they took McCoy with the very first pick of day 3. Because that's where those guys got to go to. It is unfortunate, but hey, we're taking a risk, and we don't need to be taking prime draft capital to take a risk on a guy that is a roll of the dice. Very early, Brando. I'm still sober. Oh, there's time yet. How you doing, Miss Pierce? Jalen Carter did get paid, yeah. 4-year, $40 million AP wide space. But obviously we got to wait on the details first, with where it goes. He still had 2 years left on his remaining rookie deal. He had a $27 million cap hit for 2027 originally. So we'll see how they kind of adjust that through a little bit. Any word on the Rams left tackle be suspended? No word yet. That stuff tends to come in pretty randomly and from left field. You kind of get it without almost any warning. Luis says Brendan Nelson was just doing a video about the 2027 draft and how we might have too many picks for the amount of spots we actually need. What do you guys think about us trading up for stars? Yes, it is the conundrum you're in. You have 12 draft picks as it stands, in my opinion, and you're not going to be able to use all those native picks. I think that there's 2 different things you have on the table as far as the ways to get around that. You have the trade deadline, and then you have the ability to package those picks up and then move in the draft, be it the 1st round, 2nd round, be it a couple different places. So there's time for that to get kind of sorted out, Luis, and it will get sorted out. You're not going to just natively make those selections. So I think it's kind of a wait and see, and part of it's going to be determined by how much and whether or not you need to actually make trade deadline deals this year. And do we have to make a couple of big swing moves? Do we just need to make a minor move, and then you can just kind of save it up for the draft and then package it all together at that time? I'm all about trading up this year, man. What about the third corner spot or fourth if you count Imanwari? Yeah, I wouldn't say I don't know if you're asking if that's a weakness. I wouldn't go as to being a weakness because you got your three starters, Job out there. Bud Clark's backing up Imanwari as a slot. Devin can back up Bud Clark if he can't go to him there. You drafted Neil, who's looking good in camp so far early on. Nehemiah Pritchett to build off of last year's performance. Igbenogany. I think you're okay. I'm with it, Taleb. I love the thought of packaging up for the first round this year. I think it'd be a lot of fun. All three of those guys are great picks. Yeah, Max, it does seem like Murray's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder. That's always a good thing. In football, that's always a good thing. Is Milroe good or not? OGAs was rough. Early on in training camp, it's been a little bit better, but the pick six by Bud Clark on the tip, that was on a Jalen Milroe throw. Still a little mixed bag. DeMarcus Lawrence talked about almost retiring before this year. He'll be hard to replace. True enough. There's a bridge you got to cross next year, and that's going to be beyond a free agent. I think that's the tough conundrum Seattle's going to be walking into next offseason is the real chance that you're looking at DeMarcus Lawrence moving on and Uchenna moving on at that point. And Dante Fowler is a free agent. Do you have to go out there and get 2-3 guys? Do you need to go find a highly impactful edge at that point to throw into the mix? It's going to be a little bit of a tough scenario there for John. Yes, is how funny would it be if the Seahawks traded for Marvin Harrison Jr. and he develops into a stud in Seattle? I'd love it. I wouldn't say no. I still have a soft spot for Marvin. Smeagol, that was Spoon's worst game of the year, probably. He was nursing a bad knee. Yeah, I think he was operating a little bit too. I think that was the fill-in for Imanwari as well, where he was more into the slot than he is in the outside. And I continue to maintain, I think he can more than hold up as a slot, and he can be even an impact slot. But I think he's even better on the outside. Okay, Brandon, looks like Ricky Pearsall has some knee swelling from his PCL injury from last year. I bet the Niners were regretting picking him in the first round. I don't think that they were happy about it. Substation's over there just crackling. Taking knees out, dropping Romello height, making him get card off. But boy, yeah, with Ricky, it's injuries with guys coming out of college, man, you got to be careful. And if a guy's got a fairly rich injury history coming out of college, the thinking that he's just going to suddenly get healthy as a pro now, careful, careful. Substation is the real MVP is right. The owner is the real MVP for not moving it. Oh, Imanwari being put more on the line? It's I don't think there's anything wrong with it when you think about it. I know that they've talked about him as being like doing a Parsons thing with him off the edge. I think it's more of a blitz thing off the edge. And you're peppering him in that way more than you're going to hyper blitz him like you did with Jamal. Mick, do you think Donovan Wilson having a trial with the Seahawks is insurance for Imanwari if he's unable to play right away? No, because you'll have other guys there. It's safety depth. It's probably to be able to practice fully in the way you want to practice. It's like, why you don't have a McIntosh on there? It's like you're down a guy. You got to get guys to get in there to fill in the reps. Would be my best case on that one. Ryan, crap, I got to go to the grocery store. All right, I won't be talking about it. Listen, sounds good, Brian. Honestly, Hall's a high sack guy. Hall might get 8 at most. Yeah, I think 8 to 10. I just don't think anybody's going to be really cracking through on the double digits on this roster for a couple of different reasons. One, for how much you run the ball, you're going to shorten a lot of games, and you're not going to give offenses many opportunities to throw the ball, as many possessions, that type of thing. The way you rotate through defenders on this defense and keep guys fresh throughout the course of the season, I think that you're just not always going to give them as much the volume to get there. But I think the efficiency will be there. Dogzilla Brando, how do you rate Fleury's hairstyle? Bald is beautiful, baby. Bald is beautiful. Hey, that beard more than makes up for it. Luis Brando, speaking of the draft next season, Brendan Nelson was talking about us trading up aggressively for a star because we may have too many picks for what we need. That's where I've gotten hot to trot. There's 3 different options you have. Go make a swing right now for a Max Crosby, TJ Watt guy. Give up a lot of draft capital to do that. Give up maximum draft capital to do that right now. But you got the safety of then reinforcing a position and it being done. Wait to the trade deadline. Look to make another one of those kind of trades then. The cost goes down a little bit theoretically at that time, spending less money then to make that trade at that point. The third option is that you don't have to make a trade deadline move, or you make one and you're still sitting on 11 picks going to the draft. And then I've gotten very much hot on the trail of believing that this is the year that John should really be open to moving up in the draft, because a couple of things are coalescing together. You have first, the aspect that this looks to be one of the stronger drafts that we've seen in recent memory, especially from the aspect of blue chip prospects. People heard me lament this throughout the draft process last year. I don't see any blue chippers in this draft. And it's why people didn't like the last year's draft as much, because you just didn't have the difference makers. It was not well, according to your evaluation. No, it's according to the consensus. There just aren't those guys. There's some really good players. There's some guys that might become Pro Bowlers, but there just doesn't look like they're absent a guy like maybe a Caleb Downs that's going to go out there and really just light the world on fire for you. And this is a draft that has that. I mean, I'm going on through early on, and I'm already before they've even done the final year. And the final year of college is going to net out at least probably 3, 4, 5 guys on average that are going to, by the final year of their performance, solidify themselves as blue chip quality players. And what I mean by blue chip, Luis, is you've got first round rated, and then you've got actual, okay, now these guys are first round rated, but they're blue chippers, meaning they have all pro ability. First round is like I can be an upper level starter. Blue chip abilities, I could be an all pro. So 4 or 5 more guys met out as being that. You got the Dylan Stewart, Simmons, Leonard Moore, Jeremiah Smith. There'll be a couple of quarterbacks. And so everything aligns there. I think the cost won't be so great because John can jump into 6, 7, 8, and still there'll be a blue chip guy in that spot because a couple quarterbacks will get picked at the top. Jeremiah Smith will go at the top. You'll see probably an offensive tackle or 2 go up at the top. Stewart or Simmons goes off the board. You still have a Leonard Moore there. So that's where my ideal is at right now as far as how to utilize that draft capital as it stands. But subject to change, subject to maybe the necessity of this season having to throw some of that to wind to soup this team up, especially if, let's say, should injury strike. Elias, Hawksnest, is it crazy for me not to be worried about Aaron Donald coming back? Feels like the Rams puffing up their chest, hoping to scare us. No, I think that there's certainly where you go, look, it's going to be harder with Donald. He makes them better collectively and adding to especially a position where there isn't necessarily a lot of depth there to where now at least you're getting some depth, which is one of my big question marks with them. But we have really very little track record of guys leaving the sport for 2+ years, coming back into their mid 30s and performing at the same level that they were at. It just doesn't happen. And he's kept himself in great shape. I don't think that he's going to be just a shell of himself coming out there. I don't think that he's going to be a negative for them when he goes out there. I think he brings impact, but he's not going to probably game wreck everything like he had done a couple of years ago. It's going to probably have to pick more of his spots. He's going to have to be probably more in a limited snap count. So it makes them tougher, but it doesn't make them impossible as some people on the national stage would try to present this. And we still do, again, have more than enough ammunition we have the time and the ammunition. We have the time. We don't have to make a move right now. And we get the ammunition with all those draft picks, and all the cap space we're sitting on to go, let's see how the season starts out. Yeah, we got to go make a hyper aggressive trade to keep up with the Joneses known as the Rams. to keep up with the McVays. Or maybe you get 4 or 5 weeks into the season and you find, hey, you know what? We're doing just fine. And the Rams, chemistry's kind of struggling to come together with all those kind of new parts in there. And it's not exactly playing out on the field as it looked like it was going to play out on paper. You got time to make that decision, especially considering that the cost to make the trade down the line at the deadline versus now will be reduced. The number of competition that you've got for the player you're trying to trade for will be reduced. And I like that aspect of it. But I'm basically in the same place as you on this one. You know what I mean? Oh my gosh, me coming in with a $200 donation. Thank you so much for that, me. Let's go. Oh my gosh. Very, very kind. And me, I don't know if you had a chance. I just want to say as well to me, big shout out and thank you to me, who was at the forefront, $500 donation on our charity stream this last Sunday. We crossed over $1,100 for charity here due to your guys' contribution and you as well for that, me. I think I was a little late in I couldn't figure out where it was telling me where the guys were at that actually put the donations in, because it doesn't show up on those charity streams in the same way as it shows up on these streams where I can see the donations. But from the bottom of my heart, man, thank you so much for that big fat donation, this monster donation as well. But that big donation to the charity and helping out St. Jude's in that way, I really appreciate it, man. You are awesome. Awesome. Me says, hey, B, been away for a while, but caught one of your last lives and couldn't be more proud to associate myself with you and your channel. Big ups for all you raised for those children. Was happier to help along with all the generous donations. Bless you, man. Go 12s. Go Hawks. Well, bless you as well, brother. You have kept the lights on here in the past in the off seasons when there isn't a lot going on, coming in with daily contributions at the $100 points as you have in the past, and dropping that big donation. I have been. It's the thing I've not done. I've done the worst out of this channel is having an opportunity to do those kind of charity streams in the past and promising to do so and never getting them done. And so I will tell you that they're going to be more of a common element to this channel, especially as we get into off seasons when we're not doing as many of the main kind of, shows and stuff on that. But it was my pleasure to do. Long overdue on my part, me. Long overdue. And you remaining as a, crown jewel within this community, and many others on top of you with it, that just the support and what you guys do for this channel is second to none. And it always shows up, as I say, it always shows up at every turn. Whether you're missing a couple of shows or not, somebody else is in there popping in, and it's there every time I go live. And I go into a charity stream, I put $1,000 down. I go, man, $1,000. This is gonna be a little aggressive for basically a Sunday stream in the heart of the summer. But you guys showed up. And we blew out the $1,000 mark, got up to over $1,100 on the donations, and I could be proud of you guys. You blow me away at every turn with all of that and that support, and a big time promise on my part that we're going to definitely do more of those because it feels good to give back, and we all should be giving back more, all of us. Where it's you get caught up in your own stuff and you forget to do that, but it's a very important part of life to remember to do it. Makes the world spin a little bit more smoother in that way. But thank you, man. Bless you as well. Go 12s, go Hawks. And a big shout out to my community and all that contributed, as you guys, it got me a little emotional seeing my people come in like that and give out in that way. It was just great. And you are awesome, me. $500 is just a tremendous amount to give. And I really appreciate it. More to come on that stuff in the future, for sure. That will not be a one-off. Thank you, man. Me, you're awesome, brother. Dude, $200 donation. You're just great with that stuff, brother. And kind words as well. And I'm sweating my butt off. Hold on. That AC turned up over here. It's getting a little warm over here. Appreciate you, me. Man, you're awesome. $200. Let's go. He dropped a $500 donation on that charity stream on Sunday. Me is totally goated. Totally goated. Catalyst, I'm glad you said it, so I didn't have to. Ricky's whole injury thing kind of reinforces my stance in Arroyo. It's not a thing when we say this to say, well, look at how right I was, and there's still the hope with Arroyo that this thing comes to be turned around and doesn't go the route where it sort of has started out. Everything that we do when we try to look at stuff from this community and channel perspective is always to try to improve and try to, how can we look at stuff and see things clearer and more understandable? How can we predict stuff in a very unpredictable sport? Every turn, things can randomly happen that just change your fate in every way. But are there indicators? Are there things that you can look at and read between the lines and pull out from that will then help you to avoid mistakes, see around corners, see the car crash coming, see the T-bone coming before it happens, or the brakes, where you got the guy on the road, he's driving around and like the boulder comes off the hill there. You're trying to build those, acknowledgments within your running of your processes. All of us are. The front offices, this is how you roll. And the thing was with injuries in college is that if you have a player who's got injuries in college, and then he's injured at the Senior Bowl, it's like that's not a guy in my history that tracks well to then getting healthy. And like I said earlier on this, you can take the risk on the Jermod McCoy, the most talented cornerback in last year's draft, who then falls to the 4th round. You can take that risk on that guy, but that's day 3 that you do that. You don't take that risk in day 1 or day 2 because there's more certainty in day 1 and day 2. You don't have to. Day 3, you're getting into more of that territory where it's like, the guy may or may not be a player who even makes a roster. So who cares? Let's roll those dice. But when it's day 2 and I'm turning down a sure starter on my offensive line, let's say, to go and swing for a risk player like that, who's got that injury track record, that's to me as a front office where you need to try to avoid that situation. And unfortunately, I think just with the Arroyo thing, that was really a situation that got pressed as much by 2 factors, being this Senior Bowl performance, which was really good. But again, he got injured even at the Senior Bowl, number 1. Like he couldn't even finish up at the Senior Bowl. But then the number 2 aspect has been this, of course, holy grail-like search of general managers throughout the sport now who are trying to chase unicorn H-back tight end. Spud Knight, or even a name I didn't mention. Probably Olu would be my guess here in consideration. Insurance for both your Will and your Mike, to where if those 2 positions go down with either position, for him to step in there. And if you do move him, you may not be able to say that with as much certainty. Versus with Olu, does the other backup center that you'd be putting in front of him, is that going to be as much of a differentiation? Maybe not. With Haynes, is Bo Stevens outperform Haynes? Then does that make him then expendable? Maybe. So there's a little bit extra at play in that question beyond just, and the extra being is like Knight might actually have some value in the league. Like a team might move a 3rd round pick for a guy like Knight, where they really like his talent. They're like, where Olu's not going to get you more than like a day 3. So then how does that, affect it as well, potentially? It's a good question, man. And I wonder about Knight a lot, because here's a guy that played really good when he filled in last year. He had the 2 strip sack fumbles, remember, in the Cardinal game, for the 1 game he started. You just go, boy, hard to keep that guy off the field. And you got to figure from his perspective, like, man, I'm going into year 3 now, and like I'm ready to start in this league. Max says, I'm so ready to get hurt again and draft Mike Evans in fantasy. Don't do it. Don't do it. Though I will say, no Ricky Pearsall. That's like 25 more targets for Mike Evans if that plays out to be the case. Luis, I think if we moved up for Colin Simmons type player on the line in front of Imanwari, Mike McDonald could do great things with that kind of lineup. Yeah, Simmons is fantastic. He's my number 1 edge, Luis. I have a blue chip grade on him. He would be probably more of the pure fit. Stewart's a little bit more of a kind of that leaner, lighter Averill Reese, Carter out of Penn State, Micah Parsons-ish kind of build, which isn't bad in itself, but just Simmons got a little bit more of the bigger kind of what Mike tends to prefer as far as, some of the hardier built edges, let's call it. But you can do a lot of fun things with him, man. He can stunt, he can loop, he can twist, he can work off the blitz game. No limitations when I saw off Colin Simmons' tape. He was such an easy evaluation. And I think it's good to include, with Imanwari up there in the front and try to see if we can take advantage of that quickness and speed off the edge. Just keep adding parts to your game as a pro. Why not? John says, how smart is John Schneider lining up more draft picks when the draft pool is better? It's what you think would be the no-brainer move all organizations would do, and that this is but it isn't. And that you have teams instead that will oftentimes do the things that run counter to the straightforward. And, come back to like football where they sometimes say it's not always about the plays you make, it's sometimes the mistakes you don't make. And I think you're right to look at these drafts and now and really intrinsically looking at these drafts for the last 7 years in this process of doing so for the channel and scouting these players and a lot of times looking at them ahead of advanced and times. And the thing that has really stuck out in trying to analyze these drafts and find a thread is that every draft is different. And that you walk into it and that there's a fan thought on this is that everything's draft is sort of built equally. Fans love to get caught up in the first round picks. Well, we got 32 first round picks, so there must be 32 first round worthy players. Not the way it works. Usually about 17 first round worthy players. And then there's drafts where it goes different, where there's more. And this year's draft is going to be one where there's more. And you can anticipate it. You can look in advance. I can look at Colin Simmons. I can look at Dylan Stewart. I can look at Leonard Moore. Everyone can look at Jeremiah Smith and say that is an all-pro potential player. I don't need the final year of college to tell me that. Now, the final year of college might suck. They might fall on their face. But that tends to be a rarity when they take back, unless injury comes up. And that's a whole nother, ball of wax. But he's done a great job to set the stage here, John. And having all of those picks set up ahead of time, like you say, in what's going to be a very strong, innumerable amount of quarterbacks in all rounds that will be available. First to sixth round, you will have guys available that are all got something interesting to them. Running backs look strong out the gate, varied. Solid defensive tackles down the line if you want to look that way. Corners looking typically off the first look-see. Tulay, if you could pick one of the blue chippers, which would you pick for Seattle in the best case scenario? Oof. It's a good question. Jeremiah Smith is the best of the bunch. He's going to probably be my top rated player in the draft, pure as it is. But as much as having Jeremiah Smith would be great there, you're really locked up as far as your receiving core. With Shaheed here, with Horton here already, still JSN. Colin Simmons would probably be the guy that I would go to. Either Colin Simmons or Leonard Moore would be one of the two. Collins first, and I would probably go Leonard Moore number 2. I'd probably go Moore even ahead of Stewart, just because with Stewart, he fits to any defense, but there's going to be a defense that maybe he fits even a little bit better too. And maybe not one that's looking for the power edge per se. So I would go with one of those two guys. I'll go with Colin Simmons if pressed. Catalyst, have you noticed that every time Sam throws to Elijah Arroyo, it doesn't end well, usually picked off? There's a couple of those last year. There's a couple of those last year, and that's a rookie, and he's figuring it out. So I'm just hoping it develops with time, and I'm not trying to get too caught up on my pre-draft evaluation with him. He did show you flashes last year too of some of that home run speed he brings for why he's looked at as kind of that unicorn for the position. But the questions remain. Misfit, apparently a running back fractured a rib today too. Yep, Jordan James fractured his rib as well. Yeah. And Romello Hyde, I think I heard it was cramps, but he got carted off the field a couple of days ago. If the injuries hit more again this year for the Niners, they've got to deal with the substation at that point, right? Just because. Yeah, got to give that applause on the dono, man. Me coming in hot. Me coming in real hot. Love it. Femi Hawksness, I'm predicting the Rams defense to not be a top 5. Ooh, there's a bold take. It's possible. You got to get all these parts put together. And usually with defenses, you want to put them together with young, hungry talent on the rise, and kind of, you get some vets here and there, but that's where you want it to mainly operate from its strength. First, trying to put more of a vet group together. Max Arroyo doesn't have that dog in him. Hopefully Sam learns that he can't throw hyper contested passes, or that Arroyo learns how to body people. Yeah, it's part of Arroyo's game that's not really there. I mean, he had the one contested catch last year, but that was on Josh Sweat running with him down the sideline 40 yards. And, he can win a contested catch situation against an edge. I don't know that he's going to win it in other situations, and that was not really his college tape. His college tape is, I run up the seam, I run past people, I surprise people with how fast I am for how big I am. That's what he's doing. He's creating separation, and then he's making the catch. He's not necessarily going up there and mossing people. It's not really his game. John, I donated big time to St. Jude's. What a good guy he is. Me is awesome. $500 dono dropped to St. Jude. Catalyst Rose all finesse. He has the rich injury history, cannot block, just runs seams. You may not be wrong. Rose still young. I hope he grows still, but from now on, I expect him to be just Noah Fant. That's maybe not a bad comp, man, as far as like kind of what you're getting there, with him on it. So maybe not the worst of comps there. And he may develop. We've all got our evaluation on him. It's on him at this point to develop to upend those. You got questions of you coming out of college is ABCD, and then ABCD rears itself in his first year. That stuff carries forward. So hopefully he's able to step up this season. Advisor looking like we are working out Donovan Wilson, expecting for him to potentially take over him in Mawari's spot for a bit. I would expect they'd be having Bud Clark in there, but it's possible. Maybe they want to just try to get Clark first acclimated as a safety and then start to work in some of the slot stuff. But it would make sense from that perspective of things. Catalyst says 50th pick for him when we probably had a guy like Tate Ratledge or Jared Wilson. Yeah, I'll take the OL floor raisers over a finesse H-back tight end, Noah Fant 2.0. I'm the same way. I also think that this unicorn search of NFL general managers in every draft, look at this last draft. Look at how many guys got selected in this last draft. I think I got it right here, actually. Like, just, you know what I mean? Like, in the Mitchell Evans one, I think it's wrong there. That's from like the prior year. But just gives you an indication of like how many guys got taken here. And guys like Oscar Delp in the third round. Guy's got like freaking 30 catches in his whole college career. You're taking him in the third round. And that's because that's that unicorn thing that I've seen in recent years here from these general managers, is that you're seeing players getting elevated 1, 2, 3 rounds higher than they should go because of the fact that NFL is just hoping that they can find that unearthed diamond that didn't do great in college, that can be the George Kittle-like guy at Iowa that didn't catch the ball at all, but now suddenly is going to be this awesome pass catching weapon at the pro level. It's a weird search thing they're doing here with this. It really is. Because these guys don't just grow on trees. You just wanting to pick one high doesn't make it happen. They're hard to find. A lot of them have deficiencies as H-back types, being that like they tend to not be able to block well. So you're getting this guy that's the difference maker as far as a pass catcher, but he can't block for nothing. Or blocks is just a detriment, a deficiency. I don't know why the NFL has gotten so hot to trot on this particular position in that way, Catalyst, because I'd be the same as you. I'd more take the floor of a line, more take the floor of being able to reinforce the depth of my line, especially with a young, cheap asset at that point, like one of those two guys would have been. Strange. But we're not the only ones, that's for sure. C-Town, could we trade up to the top 10, 15 in 2027? I think you can go even a little higher. I've been getting caught kind of daydreaming C-Town 6 to 9. So the thinking would go, Arch and Dante Moore go up at the top of the draft. Let's go through a feasible scenario. Colin Simmons, Dylan Stewart probably go up ahead of you. So ahead of that. So that's 4 picks off the board. Jeremiah Smith is also gone in those first 4 picks. So we're up to 5 picks. Now you get to 6. Now at 6, I still got probably a blue chip guy available. Maybe there's even a tackle that can go at 6 or at 5, you know? You get one of those blue chip Gooseby or whatever his name is. And then now you're at 7. And I'm kind of locking in on that 7 C-Town because the price to go up to like 3 versus going to 7 can be different. It can be the difference of kicking in the extra first round pick versus being able to just kick in the extra day 2 pick. So I look at it like 7. You flip a first. You're going to flip probably at that point. You'd ideally, I think, like to try to keep your first round pick in the next year's draft. It might be hard to do that. But hell, that might even be on the table for me where I take, 2 first round picks and then you throw one of your extra third rounders in this year's draft to move up to 7. Now you're picking at 7. You get the blue chipper. You're still at that point. If we haven't made any trade deadline deals, then you're still at that point sitting on 10 picks remaining for the rest of the draft, meaning you can still at that point, if you want to package up in the second or in the third round to go targeted on guys, you can still do so even beyond that at that point. Or package picks together to try to get back that first round pick from next year's class. Or instead of using the first round pick from next year's, use some of those picks from this year's class to make it go. But I think what you'd like to do, C-Town, is rather than move into the teens where you got blue chip, first round talent, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you're all blue chip, all pro potential, all world potential. Now I get into 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Now I'm more into just prime first rounders. Now I'm into like above average starters, all pros, above average starters. So if I'm going to move up, if I'm going to have to give up the goods to move up, I want to get the player that's worthwhile for doing so. And that means I want the blue chipper. I don't want the just good guy. I want the real difference-making guy that I can throw onto this defense. And I'm caught as much up into it because part of this all comes from you have all of those picks. You can't find roster spots for all of those picks. You've had times in the past during the Legion of Boom era where you've literally had to cut third rounders, fourth rounders before you got to game 1 of their career because the roster was too set at those positions. You don't want to go back over that again. You don't want to run back into that again. And one of the places I would expect that John would learn his lessons of the first prior time, I'll just sit on all the picks. We'll just use all the picks. Pick. And similarly, in that year that you cut that third rounder, Amaro Darbo for nothing was a year where you had way too many picks and you should have consolidated them down. But I think you gotta go up top 10, C-Town. You got to go big or go home on that one. Lord Disciple asks, Hawks Nest, how deep is this edge group? It's looking sensational out the gate. First, right off the rip, you got the blue chip talent. You better believe you got the blue chip talent. Colin Simmons, Dylan Stewart, they will be top 6 picks in next year's draft as long as they don't fall on their face this year. The thing is with this is like, just as far as my favorite, enjoy him, love the tape, you just love the guy, but he's not necessarily got quite the physical components or the build of those other 2 guys. Clev Lubin is awesome. And I got a first round pick on Clev Lubin. So I've got 3 first round grades on the edges right now. Remembering with this, that this would tend to be a year coming in the draft that you'd have a collection of guys more second to third round and maybe not even any first rounders where you're like, guys have got to do some proving ground stuff. I need to see this guy actually give it to me this year to get him up in that elevated spot. So having already 3 right now out the chute is tremendous. There is a dip from my perspective at that point, as far as I don't have any necessarily second round graded edges, but then I've got six edges that I have in the third round. And all 6 of those edges can absolutely round out their skill set to elevate themselves into first round status this year. And they've all have their own individual things that you can kind of point to with it. But Damon Wilson, pressure machine out of Missouri. I believe he's going to, I think it's Florida State or Miami. But he's a guy that just knows how to get to the quarterback. He's going to have tremendous 2 years of pass rush production when he comes out. Anthony Smith, big old power edge, would work great in this defense. Mattia Ugalele, another big power edge that would work great in this defense, just needs to advance his pass rush repertoire. Adam Trick going to Texas Tech is a lot of fun off the edge, really hyperactive guy. going from more of the small school to a bigger school. Let's see if he can take the jump. Prince Will Umamalian, brother of Prince Umamalian, very similar player to his brother, who was a day 2 pick himself. Got him in the 3rd round. Hanze Pierre also in there. Like him a lot too. So I've got 6 in the 3rd round. I'm not as big on John Henry Daly, but again, I'm just starting to get into these edges, Lord Disciple. So that's just off the initial look-see. It's looking good. I think Vita Vea to the Niners makes a lot of sense. Niners are sitting on $79 million of cap space. They're splitting the difference. They've got their crotch on the fence. Which side do you want to be on here, Niners? Are you going for it this year, or are you just trying to split the difference? And a move like that, going for a guy like Vita Vea, helps their defensive line out tremendously. They've already kind of started to build that defensive line out good, and this would really give them now an impactful point. They've got the supporting parts. Alfred Collins is a supporting part. The CJ kid they got of Indiana is supporting part. Grayson Holton can come and give you some pass rush, hopefully here and there. And then Osa is going to be their pass rushing, 3-tech guy in there too. And so he just fit right on in nicely. Him and Osa as your early rundown guys, and then you bring in Alfred Collins as a rundown defender, and that could work really well. It'd be it'd be hard to run the ball against that team, especially when Michael Williams gets out there. Like, that's the thing about it. Give them a wall of run stuffing and give them a real strength to build off that defense, which right now, what is the strength of that defense? Maybe their off-ball linebacking core, as long as it's healthy. I think the Raiders are kind of my team that have been, who I think that's the one that makes them, to me, the most sense. But I think the Cowboys, Chargers, or the Niners or the Chargers. HEG, if Vita Vea goes to the Niners, that force our hand to go after someone? Not yet, but maybe by the deadline. It is all just I'm in that assessment phase of things. You've built a strong, full team with depth. You've got the ammunition to do more, but I don't know if the time is right now to do more for the position that you would want to upgrade. Catalyst says most of those guys were overdrafted and heavy reaches. If 12 personnel is really meta now, they have to be good tight ends that can block as well. Agreed. And I think to your point on this, Catalyst, what's happening conceptually is the general managers are getting too caught up in what he is as a pass catcher. He runs like a deer. He's the size of a mountain and he runs like a deer. Okay. How's he block? It's not the best part of his game. Okay. Well, I like what you talked about there, but we're taking the guy day 2 and he's got this deficiency. But we're going to get him in mismatches and we're going to be able to draw those mismatches. Like, maybe I look across the league and I just don't see a lot of tight ends that are being set up in this way, where it's like, look at that tight end smoking that guy at a base 3-4, that linebacker who can't cover in space. They got their unicorn on the linebacker that can't cover in space over and over again. They just can't do nothing about it. I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing productive tight ends, but I'm typically seeing them be productive as tight ends are productive, where they get forgotten a little bit about in the run blocking game, a little bit of chip and release action at times. You kind of run some flood zone concepts and get them opened up, but it's less to me about you finding some of those mismatches. And some of this feels almost like general managers looking at the game like it's 2009 or something. I haven't been able to make much sense of it because there just hasn't been as much the production as what the investment is being thrown at it. Jordan Seaton, I've got a 2nd round grade on him right now, Tulalip. Good tackle. I've got Trevor Gooseby and Caden Green are my 2 first rounders right now. And Gooseby's actually going to be probably in fact, I'm doing that now. I got him as a blue chipper. Mick, I'd love Colin Simmons. His interview reminds me of all the players we have on this team. Guy who are team first. Ooh, I haven't heard him talk. That's cool to hear, though. That's definitely going to help him out come draft time. Could the Vikings go from 7th ranked defense in 2025 to 1st in defense and Kyler Murray ride the purple wave all the way to the Super Bowl, a la Jim Plunkett, Sam Bradford? Anything's possible. I think with Kyler Murray, there's a lot you got to work around in Kyler Murray's game that the Raiders did not have to work around in Jim Plunkett. Sam Bradford. I think you mean the other guy the Raiders did that with. Defense could be good. Remember with the Vikings that they did lose Jonathan Grenard. So they need the kid that they took out of Alabama to come forward for them this year as an extra part. Brand Eagle is getting a little bit up there in age, off the other edge, and they're going to be very reliant on him too. They need to get some production from the rookie class. Banks comes in there and he can realize some of that Chris Jones-like potential he has to his game and not be beat up and injured. It's possible. And I love what Flores does. Back, bro, I don't F around. Let's go. Nick, is there any sleepers, Brandon, that you've scouted for the next draft that you think will rise up in the draft rankings? It's hard because I've gotten more on the frontline guys at this point. I'm about 60 deep, and once you get to probably about 110 to 115 in the process is when you start to maybe see guys that you think will rise up. I don't know if everybody's got Clev Lubin as a first-round guy. I think he's a guy that more people would have probably second, third-round grade on. So, me raising him up is definitely one where I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case. I think maybe a Jamari Johnson, tight end out of Oregon, is a guy that could rise up. It's obviously there's a lot of quarterbacks in play that potentially could have that go down. David Stone, I've got him in the third round, but a guy that could definitely has got some first round ability to him. All of the Oregon defensive linemen, Bear Alexander, Amari Washington, Mateo Ugalele, all those guys are tremendously talented. The production's not there with them on the tape. And you're looking for that part to take a strong step forward with each of them if they're going to solidify themselves as potential first round prospects. But I haven't quite gotten to that stage of it yet. Making progress, but not quite to that area. Dune, wow, 2027 is going to be an amazing draft opportunity for us. As for blue chippers, what position do you think we'd be looking at, Brandon? I think edge is the strong one because you've got DeMarcus Lawrence probably retiring after this year. This is probably going to be Uchenna Nwosu's last year here. Dante Fowler's probably on a 1-year contract. So you're sitting at that point with Derek Hall and not a lot else. And if you have the opportunity to go get a guy like Colin Simmons, Dylan Stewart, Clev Lubin, I think that can make a lot of sense where these are guys that are now legit talents that aren't like Boye Mafe or Derek Hall type talents. We're not talking second rounders that are proverbial or hypothetical, but are actual guys that are, this guy's ready to go. This guy's ready to give you something right now. Maybe it won't be absolute star right off the gate, but it's going to give you some juice. Those would be the two. I think Leonard Moore will be the best cornerback in the class. And there might be a chance that he drops a little bit because of some of the other positions that are just more highly valued, like quarterback or receiver or edge. And that he could land in a spot of the draft that's, you put him in there with Witherspoon and Eamon Wari for what is a very defensive back-driven defense of the Seattle Seahawks. I wouldn't mind that either, man. I got a lot of ways I can go with this with some of these guys doing. Julia, what I like is how any player can blow up. Who knows what players can come up this year? That's the missing ingredient to my pre-draft list right now, is I have all these first rounders. I've got a lot of these guys up really high. I like this. I love this class. But your point of this, there's going to be even more. The final development of that final year in your final college season is when you put in your work. And the work tends to be, it can go the opposite direction. It can be faltering. It can be all this potential that you just don't realize. There are those stories, but there's so many other stories of those guys in that final year locking in, knowing what's at stake, knowing they've got draft positioning like a pending free agent. You've got draft positioning on the table, and you're able to be from going to a third round guy to being a first round guy, being a fourth round guy to being a first round guy. Collection of those guys put in the work, and this draft class becomes absolutely unbelievable. Goes from being more than just a really good, one of the better ones we've seen in recent years, to becoming an unbelievable one, to your point. Banker L. Priest, thank you for the $2 donation. It's good to see you in the house, brother. 49ers having more injuries at camp. Unbelievable. Even the coach is not going unscathed. It's wild, man. And it's happening to kind of all varieties. You have a Romello Height, that's a rookie. Maybe those were cramps. Well, here, I hadn't heard an update on him. But Parasol's got back to the knee. And but they had the other guy that broke his rib. It's pretty wild. It's already starting for them, it feels like. Yeah, the Parasol one just still go back to, I just can't believe that they took that guy in the first round. I mean, he's had moments when he's been on the field and played. I mean, he's given them more than I thought they were going to get at him as a player when he's been on the field. But ooh, not the best of starts so far in camp from the Niners. If we're talking about how are the stars boding, what are the stars telling you up in the sky, Niners? They do not bode well. I'm looking ahead for the future of Mike's defense. If he locks in his first premium edge rusher, I'd love to see it. You know, he'd love to have one too. Haloti Ngata, Oregon versus Vita Vea, Washington. I think Haloti probably was 365-ish. I think Vita is more 345, 350. I think Noti got him on 10 pounds. Both of them monster. Both of those guys just move in a way that men at 350 pounds should not move. Yeah, let's 2027 drafts looking super promising. Now, can college football stray any further away from pro style NFL offenses? Well, it's easy way to eliminate that is to move the hash marks closer. And then you'll start to see more of an overlap from one to the other. But college football doesn't seem to be intent on doing that. As long as they're the wide hashes, you'll see the spread offenses. Alice says, F these trends. I'll remain hardlined on proper offensive philosophy and using players how they should be. Agreed. And you can look for your unicorn tight end. Just don't stretch and claw and tear and twist yourself into knots to make it happen. You know, let it naturally occur if it's going to occur. Not willing to scratch my eyes out watching college air raid offenses develop one read quarterbacks that can get hurt because they scrambled early and can't go through progressions. It makes it hard for me to watch college football as well. A lot of my scouting process comes through cut-ups and getting down to being able to just go play. Because when you watch the way the games go and the style of it, it's not the most funnest style to watch for me, to your point. Because you're just watching kind of robotics going on at times rather than, especially the quarterbacks, actually playing the position as they need to. Lord Disciple Hawks Nest. Did you see Warren Sharp saying he doesn't think that we'll make the playoffs? I've heard some hot takes in my time, but that one might take the cake. Yeah, I think that there is a manner of analysis that goes on in pro football right now that sometimes bothers me. And that analysis is that everything becomes stat driven. I'm going to break everything down into a numerological chart. You know, how do you play on these days with a 5-mile-an-hour wind in your face, but you know, when the stadium's filled with more men than women? There's all of these stats that guys will go through, and I think that that's great that you have all this information and data to tear through. It is. I also think, though, that when you look at any one data point and you're just getting hyper focused on data point and you're not bringing everything, the full picture into play, like, for instance, I always say with the PFF stuff, the all 22, you're leaving out a lot of the story. That data should be there, but you got to pair it all together. And when you listen to Warren Sharp talk about, you know, his analysis of Seattle not making the playoffs, everything devolves back into the statistical perspective of how he can kind of make the stats go. You can make numbers work any which way you want, you know? And so, you know, he talks about the tough schedule, but it's like, yeah, but the tough schedule is the same tough schedule the rest of this division plays through. Absent 3 games. But that goes kind of counter to the narrative he's trying to trot out there. And I like Warren. I like the work that he does. And I think that there's a lot of times where there's some good points that he breaks. But I do think that that's where he gets lost in the forest despite the trees, where because his game is numbers and it's all numbers, that becomes the only thing he's kind of quantifiably operating off of. And that's not the whole story. That's not the whole picture. That's you taking the telescope and sighting in on a very specific part of it a little bit. So it just more of the same throughout this offseason, though. It's been more of what I've gone to over and over again is that these people, experts, pundits, analysts, do not understand what made Seattle great last year. They don't. And you can hear it in his analysis on this. We were something that was such an outlier and so unusual to football, they can't make sense of it. And so you see them now, even post after the fact, trying to make sense of it. And now their projections into 2026. And I don't know why. I don't know. It seems like the Seahawks have broke the brain of some of these analysts out there. I mean, you hear Bucky Brooks going 7-10, and Brock Heward asked him on the show where he goes, Bucky, when does John Schneider ever go 7-10 here throughout his 15 years? What are you doing here? And then Bucky starts, yabba, 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 you know, starts mumbling over his words and saying a bunch of non sequiturs. They're not basing it off of anything. It's just kind of something they generally just kind of think. And it's exposed time and time again when they try to bring up some of the points that they try to bring up. What about Killer Clowney, bro? Looks like a straight up bear with long arms. Yeah, he's awesome. He's a great fit to this defense for that reason. Sounds like he might be going to Cleveland. C-Town. Okay, let's go get Simmons. You convinced me. Bad man, I'm in. I'm in. He might go top 3-4 though, too. So, you know, we're seeing edges go number 1 overall at this point at times, and he might be that type of guy. Outside of the quarterback, you know, number 2, number 3, right out after the first couple of quarterbacks. That might be too high to go get him. All right. Vita Vea is originally from the Bay Area. Oh, there we go. Niners, man. It's coming down, Niners. Dune says, holy crap, that Shanahan got 40 stitches in his face and multiple broken bones. His accident makes me look at him as a fellow man and not a rival. So glad his accident was not fatal. Me as well. Very scary situation. It's good to hear that, you know, he's been able to get out of it and sounds like he's on the road to recovery well, which is good to hear. CR, hello from Germany. Sure, you already talked about it, but what do you guys think about Leo talking about his contract? Also, B, even if unlikely, would you be willing to give it for Vita? Jaron Reed plus a third? I think it'd just be hard to move a guy like Jaron Reed. He's been a leader in this locker room. He's not just a leader in this locker room, but he's a stalwart of this organization. He's come back here a second time and achieved the ultimate success. Just where it gets hard to include any guys, you're more going to bring on this guy's the fifth and kind of work the rotation. And that's where it just doesn't work in alignment. Because once you have 5 guys here, it's like somebody's getting no snaps, unless you got an injury. I'd have a second rounder. I'd give up, but I'd want to do like a second round. And then, I'm giving you a second and I'm telling him we're bringing you in, but we're not giving you an extension. And, we'll let you walk as a free agent after the year. I would probably try to put something like that together, but it just isn't alignment, man. That'd be pretty cold blooded to do that to Reed. And maybe you could do like a Riley Mills in a third, something like that might be more of a possibility, I guess. But even then, I just don't know the fit because who you sitting on the bench between Byron Murphy, Vita Vea, and Leonard Williams? Oh, Hawks, Tony. Okay, I still can't wrap my head around the fact that it took 2 weeks for the full story to come out. Hyper curious individuals would have tried to look up her personal information. Probably so. And yep, it's interesting how they kept it under wraps. Interesting too, as well, that you see that the police in the area, in the way that they filed the report coming out, that it was initially made to look like it was the girl's fault. I thought that there was a little bit of a quasi kind of cover up there. Not that it's some egregious thing, but it's like, yeah, okay, So yeah, it's a little strange. It goes to show you too, sometimes with the reporting that goes on with some of these teams and local reporting that goes on with these teams, is that we are far outside the era of intrepid reporters breaking news stories and getting out ahead of things. These guys want their access and they're going to they're never going to, shake the boat. And this is kind of another example of that. Brian says, why would Vea risk injury going to the Niners? Yeah, he's a West Coast guy, wants to come back to the West Coast, wants to get paid. If he gets paid, he's not as worried. Right now he doesn't want to go in the season not getting paid and sitting on the current contract. So gets the money. He's got the confidence to feel okay doing that at that point. Maybe he doesn't believe in substations. Christian Kirk got injured too. Niners. Meanwhile, I'm waiting for NFL to drop the hammer on Alaric Jackson. It's going to probably come down soon. They're random about a banker, and they're kind of cold-blooded about it, where it just comes out of left field, and they don't give seemingly much time to kind of prepare. It's like now, You have the funniest thumbnails. Thank you, man. Go Hawks. Go Mariners. Go Indians. Good. Appreciate you, man. Try to have some fun with these thumbnails when I can. Much love to you too, brother. God bless. We got youth for sure. Yeah, we're stacked up the middle, Micah, and it just doesn't make sense. And look, I love Vita. It's surprising to be in this position, not to be like, go get him. And it's kind of been odd this whole offseason where it's like, we don't have to go do this. We're most off seasons and just coming off the championship, just coming off such a young, good team that's still on the rise. You do not feel impelled to have to do it. You feel set. You feel good to go. It's not that it could hurt. It's just that you think, maybe there's a move down the road we'll have to make where we got to strike to a position of need, and this one will not be that. Yeah, I don't think Riley's getting traded either. I don't think, and that's where I don't think this deal aligns in any way to make it happen. You don't have the room for him as far as the rotations go. You're strong as hell on the front side. You got the good depth. You got the riser and guys like Mills, who you really feel like this guy's got some real top end potential to him, as we want him to start to realize that this year and not put him on the back of a depth chart, or trade him away to another team that's going to be able to get the benefits of that. So it really just doesn't fall in alignment, unfortunately. PR, Brian, the substation has obviously impacted the 49ers PR group. That's why it was poorly handled. Niners are a hot mess from coach to water boy. It is just, something went wrong a couple years ago there, and it's the energy has just been off. And I don't know, it's the voodoo doll or an Etsy witch. I don't know what the cause of this thing is, but goodness. Catalyst, all the credit and respect for Kyle to admit he was at fault, though. Any longer and misinformation would have been run rampant. Yes, I think it's good of Kyle to take the responsibility and be open about it, and do so, because some of the rumors and stuff out there was going that it was on the other person and that they were at fault. Speaks to his character that he stood up. I don't think all guys in his position would have done that necessarily. They would have been happy to let the rumors kind of play out how they were going to play out. So good on him. Good on him. And hopefully he was able to recover fully. Is Pumpkin out enjoying the sunshine? She's right now in the window, and she's napped out in front of the sunshine of the window at the moment. Bang Bang turned Brock to a chicken wing. Right, you got that grip strength, man. Dude, when the Hawks are going to play in the Super Bowl at SoFi, is the broadcast network going to use McVay and few players the way they put Shanahan and Fred Warner on screen this last February? Ha ha ha. I hope so. That'd be fitting. That was so awesome before the Super Bowl, where they go to Shanahan to give an analysis, and they're like, so Kyle, what do you do against this Mike McDonald defense? And he's like, well, I've gotten my ass kicked the last 2 times and haven't got any points scored against him. So I'm probably the last guy you want to ask about that. It did make me like Kyle a little bit more when he said that. It was pretty cool. Niners are never going to escape the substation allegations. Kirk went down too now. I mean, my goodness. We're getting one every hour at this point. They may not be able to field a full team by game 1 out in Australia. They might have to recruit some Australians. Megan out there. Megan, you ready to play a little bit of tailback, a little fullback? CRB. But the positive with Vea is maybe chat will understand now players are getting available we didn't think were possible. It's a good point. And it's why I'm okay with waiting, is that you may look at it right now and say, well, Crosby's available right now, and Vita Vea is available right now. And the good players paying ultimately the top of the price to go get them right now. But history has taught us, CR, that the patient man that can wait to the trade deadline will more often than not find some hardy options available to him at that time, and options that fit to what you need at that time. Injury struck. This position is not playing as strong as we thought it would play. Maybe you need an outside corner, for instance, something like that we're not thinking going in that we're going to need. Well, now you can make that intelligent decision at the time where you know truly what you need. You're not guessing. And then the player becomes available. If there's something good that's always popping up. Who could have ever predicted a Villa was going to be available potentially here in training camp? I mean, we heard nothing about a contract squabbles. And I think, in fact, it's kind of dumb on the part of the Buccaneers that this has gotten to this stage of things. You're setting this team up with Bowles on the hot seat, essentially, now or never. You better get to the playoffs this year or you're out. You got Baker on the edge of getting a contract extension after this year. And you're going to have this question mark in your training camp for a defense that's not exactly loaded to the gills. You're trying to kind of rebuild this defense for your defensive-driven head coach who kind of needs his defense to be at his best. It's not a good look on the part of the Buccaneers. But yes, you're absolutely right. A representation of the fact that this kind of player does become available a lot by the deadline. It's a risk. It's a gamble. There are no certainties to whatever, but more often than not, you're going to get a couple of these guys. And then it just comes down to not whether or not those guys become available, or if there's a couple of those guys available. The question always comes down to, will you be willing to give up the cost? Do you have the assets? Do you have the salary cap space to make the deal happen? That's really the key in the question. And the answer on that one, of course, is indubitably, hell yes, Seattle does. Brian says Tampa Bay likely to reach an agreement and not trade Vita. That's where I just can't understand them doing the trade at that point where you're getting a first round pick for next year. And that almost starts to feel like they're looking at already moving the process of, we're going to move on from the coach. We don't want to pay Baker. We're doing a little bit of a soft reset at that time. If they made that move. And likewise, Brian, it would just seem like the sense really makes most sense to just keep him. I'm curious about why Kyle's Tesla did not have an automatic collision avoidance. Maybe turn it off. I don't know Teslas. I don't know fancy cars. Dune. Pat McAfee's show is split on who's winning the NFC West. Hawks, Rams. At least they did better than the sports books who are favoring the Rams. At least they're not living in Bucky Brooks's land. Yeah, if you want to tell me that you think that the Rams, the 49ers, are going to overtake Seattle this year and that they win the division, then I'm not going to get mad at that. I could understand that as a general take. It's what it is that these people are going overboard like Bucky did, where it's like 7-10, not making the playoffs, step back. And you can make that prediction about a team. But when you call yourself an analyst, you then have to validate that very, very stark claim. You're saying a team that won 14 games is going to win half that amount next year. Yeah, harder schedule. We played in the toughest division in football last year. What are we talking about? Harder schedule. You just kind of look at it and you shake your head when they come to that. You want to say we go to 11 wins, get in the playoffs. We're just not quite as strong. Injury comes up a little bit. That's reasonable, realistic. That does happen. But that you're going to fall off a freaking cliff, which is basically a lot of these people are projecting out. Sharps and the Bucky Brooks of the world. That's a ridiculous take for people that are supposed to be experts. Anything's possible in the NFL. Any team can go out and lay an egg for a given year, especially if the injury epidemic hits you at every turn. But to predict that it's a likelihood for Seattle, I don't think that speaks to in-depth analysis. I've said I think it speaks to more of I want to operate in the shallows here. And with Bucky and with Bourne, I don't think that they tend to be those type of guys. But on these takes, I think that they are fully in that land. Villa's good nose tackle. Misfit. Head coach, Jordan James, Romello Height, Kirk, Pearsall. Who am I missing on that substation list? I think there was one more, but it's getting to be too many guys already. I can't keep track of all the names. Catalyst, the NFL mainstream pundits got it wrong last time, so what's not to believe they'll screw it up again in their predictions? It's true. That's the part. These guys are supposedly experts, but how far off were they off with it last year? We've seen it time and time again. It's kind of weird because you think that part of their job is having a track record to getting things right and trying to get things right, and you'd want to look past the surface. Catalyst, harder schedule, lost K9, too many players lost in free agency, lost Kubiak, Rams are too good. Yeah, that's basically what their analysis is on it. Exactly. And, the Flory thing and the new OC thing and losing Kubiak, and boy, you would have thought Kubiak like almost single-handedly brought us to the promised land. By the way, people talk about him here this offseason. It's like good OC, but you talk about one guy's reputation swinging in such a major way through just one season as Kubiak's did. It's pretty startling. The opinions of Kubiak going into last year versus now. And he helped, sure. So did Ben, so did the rest of the offensive staff. But all of that analysis, too, that Kubiak being lost sort of acknowledges within it when you say, well, Kubiak being lost, you go, yeah. So all of the returning staff matters not. Going from same offense to same offense matters not. No, just the OC. So and what it is those analysts, experts are having a hard time with this one because I just want to look at the OC. I don't want to think about the staff. I don't want to think about offensive line coaches. I don't want to think about continuity with that. Just what does the OC look like? That's why I say just why give much onus to what they say on that when you know it's that's what the basis is of why they're coming to the opinion they are. But that's it, man. Catalyst catches it well. This is the gist of why they think we're going to fall off the cliff. Brian says 11 of our games last season were against playoff teams. How could that have been any easier than this year's schedule? Again, are they analyzing last year's schedule when they say that? No, they're just looking at this year's strength of schedule and they're going, well, here's the strength. And even on this year's strength of schedule, it's like it's more closer to middle of the road than it's being the toughest schedule in the NFL. Like I look at, for instance, the Rams' lack of 3 common opponents we have between the Rams. They've got a tougher stretch of 3 games than we do. They got to play like the Buffalo Bills. We get the Chicago Bears. I'll take the Bears. And so you kind of don't get it a little bit when you look at it. It'll be around what last year's schedule was. There's some easy games in there. There's some tough games, a few 10 a.m. games, a lot of prime time games. And that's the other part about the tough schedule is you're not stuck 5 games at 10 a.m. going out to the East Coast. Very much got really sprinkled through nicely. You're only traveling 21,000 miles when you typically travel 32,000 miles, even up to 35. All the rest of your division has to travel those miles, being the Niners and the Rams because they're going to Australia. Tony, it seems like everyone's reluctant to believe Seahawks will go 13-4 again. What the F? I mean, they're reluctant to believe we'll get to 10 wins at this point, based on what I'm reading. Every other day, it's a new analyst coming out with another prediction about us being in single digits. My neighbor was curious about the Cybertruck, and the dang thing drove itself to his place so he could check it out. Amazing. That is pretty crazy. I don't know, though. See something like those things go into the water and you can't get out. You can't, kick the windows out. That's kind of scary for me. I need to be able to kick out my windows if I'm going to go into the lake. I don't want to go in the lake, but if I happen to go into the lake, then I need to be able to kick the windows out. I'll rub my hands in the dark corner and Seattle holds teams hostage again at Lumen Field. Tom says, Trade Mills, are you out of your ever-loving mind? Vita is 31. I'm not advocating for trading him. You maybe are responding to a poster up there. I was saying that that's what the cost would be. But no, I do not want to trade for Villa. I don't think that there's a fit for trading Villa. I don't think it makes sense to trade for Villa. But that would be what the trade would look like and how you tried to put it together. You'd have to offload some defensive tackle asset within the trade because you're going to end up with 5 deep and you really would only look to have the 4 deep like you have right now. But no, I do not think we should do it. Catalyst, Seattle is an elite road team and they only have 3 or 4 10 a.m. I think we only have 2 10 a.m. games, Catalyst. I think we only got 2. Spud, Brando, it seems the NFL is still pissed that they had to hand the trophy to us. No respect. Kind of starts to feel like that a little bit. I'm not a big lack of respect guy, but it's wild how many people come out to say this. And maybe they're just so ahead of it. Maybe they're just so intrinsically aware of what's going to go on this upcoming season and the pulse that they're taking. But if their analysis had a little bit more rooted in something that was tangible and felt real, then I could understand it, but it's not. It's more of like proverbial stuff, well, like this should be like this with like maybe that, and then like that could happen maybe, and then maybe that'll pop up. It's more of that type of stuff. I'm really curious to see how K9 season goes in KC. Kermit is raving about him, but can his body endure it? His usage rate will be interesting. What say you? Well, I think he's going to have success. I think Andy Reid knows how to put together a running game, and I think a lot of the lack of success of running game for KC in recent years has come down to not always generating or driving a lot of holes in the run blocking game because you build more of a pass protecting offensive line. And then obviously I don't think that they've had the best of running back talent in there as well. The running back talent goes up. I don't know if the offensive line is better at run blocking now than they've been in recent years past. I think he'll find some effectiveness. I do think he's going to get worked and down and wore down as we get to game 10, 11, 12 of the season. And I think the Chiefs are going to find that you need to have this guy more. What you're going to hear from the Chiefs after this year is going to be, we need to get another complimentary back to K9 so that we can keep his load management under control. And I don't think that this year that's going to be what they're going to do. I think they're going to just try to run him 300 touches and let's go. We'll see. I don't know if that's going to hold up for a full season. I think you got to split the backfield with him. I think you got to commit more to trying to keep him into 250 touch territory to get the most out of him and to keep him healthy for a whole season. I think the Raiders Chargers should get Vita Vea. I agree. If I'm looking at teams that should make that move, it would be those two teams. Chargers especially would make a lot of sense. Their defense seems like it could use a little bit more of an injection over there. They do have T.R. Tard who does a lot of that, but they move a little bit of what they do on the defensive line in the past too, between those two guys. Like there's a little bit of, like Puna was there and you sometimes 3-tech, sometimes nose tackle. So I think those are the two better teams as far as landing spots go, I think. Especially because he wants to be on the West Coast, supposedly. Andy Reid's going to still run a pass-focused offense anyway. Probably. But when he does go to the run, he's going to work, I think, Kenneth a lot in that element of things. Yeah, I'm not a big guy in the Cybertruck look necessarily. It's like people love those Tesla cars. My brother's got a Tesla. Yeah, only 2 10 a.m. games. That's where it's like the schedule's not set up. Limited 21,000 miles that you got to fly. Only 2 10 a.m. games. Primetime games littered out. No gauntlet on this schedule where you're facing 7, Titans in 8 weeks. You got some tough stretches, but everything is pretty well managed throughout to allow you to be able to still find success in those tough stretches. You got some relief points within the schedule. The bye week comes at a really nice time. I mean, it's for being a Super Bowl winning team and getting a number 1 overall schedule. I mean, we came out pretty good. I feel like we did pretty solidly on it. Rivalry jerseys versus the Lames. Yeah, I like the Rams. The Rams jersey. Ugh. Good to hear Milroe turn around a little bit here in training camp. OTAs were rough. You're hearing from a variety of people that they just weren't quite seeing it come forward, but it does sound like we're starting to get some progress. And this is the point about coming back to with Milroe of not reaching conclusions after year 1, not reaching conclusions through this training camp, that we truly do give this guy 2 full years. That I want to get through the full second season of him through all this time in training and to see where the advancement's at. And then you can start to make your assessment about how much confidence and faith you have in the guy moving on into the future. Cybertrucks are gross. I agree. I don't like the look of them. It doesn't do nothing for me. I'm not a big car guy anyway, but look like a block. Corey, All teams in our division, Brando, are having injury issues besides us. Young of the Rams, Ricky of the Niners, and Marvin for the Cards. Yeah, they got Jordan James also for the Niners there, having issues. Romello Hyde got carted off. I think the Romello's got cramps, I think, so I don't want to make too much of that. But the PCL injury for Parasol is legit, and they're worried about it. And that thing may mean surgery, and he may be out. You never know on that with that type of stuff. It sounds very sobering out there what we're hearing from them. Young with the Rams is an interesting one, and the Rams are playing a very sticky little game here, and they got to be careful because the Rams have all these guys up for contract extensions. And I've been talking to you guys to depth on this. I know where you go to these four guys, Delavilla, Puka Nacua, Byron Young, Kobe Turner, all earned extensions, all have earned monster extensions, all have outperformed the rookie contract. And you're going to go to each one of these guys and you go, hey, look, where's the Super Bowl? We're going to go win Super Bowl this year. You want to go win Super Bowl? You committed to win. I want to go win a Super Bowl. Cool. We're going to bring back Aaron Donald, man. We're getting Aaron Donald back. Yeah, we're getting Aaron Donald. He's going to cost $20 million or something, Maybe it's going to use up a lot of our cap space. We're not going to have, it's going to get a little tight here. Okay. So we need you to wait. You hang tight for a year. Okay. Yeah, I know you're on that rookie contract. I know it's after taxes, a couple $100,000. I know. Yeah. A couple years of it. You've been playing on it. Yeah. I know you're a guard, Avila. You don't get sponsorship opportunities. I get that. We just need you to wait. No, all four of you. We're not even one of you we're going to pay. All four of you wait. But we'll get you after the year. After the year, we're going to pay you everything you guys need then. You're going to get paid then. Like totally. Guaranteed? Would you say guaranteed? No. We're not going to guarantee we're going to pay you after the year. We're just telling you we're likely to do it. So we just need you guys to wait, okay? Everybody cool with that? And then, okay, you get the players to go. Do you notice the frown on their face as they're nodding? See that little frown on my face as I'm nodding as one of those four players as I'm Puka Nacua, Actually, with Puka, it'd be more like this, right? So you get them nodding and frowning. And okay, they swallow that bitter pill. They force that thing down the gullet. Now you get them into week 2. A little soft roll of the ankle. Hammy's a little bit tight. Back's acting up. Could go out there and play. I could tough it out. Might be a little bit diminished. Do I want to put diminished tape in a contract year on film? Do I want to make sure I'm protecting my body in this contract year? Yeah, I want to win championships. But I'm Byron Young. I'm Puka Nacua. I'm Kobe Turner. I'm Steve Avila. I haven't made my big contract yet. What's more important? My Super Bowl championship or ensuring that I'm going to get paid? This is why you don't go down this territory with players who have earned their contract extension. This is why you give Abraham Lucas his extension. This is why you give Charles Cross his contract extension. This is why you give Jackson Smith and Jigba his contract extension. This is why you're going to pay Leonard Williams right now. You don't get down to this spot of things because you're going to get into week 5 or 6. And what happens when this week? Well, Avilia's saying his hammy's acting up and Young over on the other side saying it's got a little bit of a bicep issue. And now we're down 2 of those guys for a couple of weeks as they try to make sure they're 100% taking care of themselves. So Young being out of training camp, guess who was also off? Wasn't at OTAs. Guess which 2 players at OTAs had braces on them? Kobe Turner and Byron Young. Careful when you play this game. Careful when you play this game. Because these players will push back, and they will push back in subtle ways that aren't just hold-ins, or I'm going to be a pain in your ass, or I'm going to force you to trade me. It can also be these kind of situations where they just kind of protect themselves in that final year, knowing what's up. 23 gauntlet of Rams, 49ers, Cowboys, 49ers, Eagles. I hated that. That was the worst gauntlet we faced in 5 years. There was, I think you played 3 games and I think you played 4 games in 21 days, I think, or something like that as well within that gauntlet. That schedule was set up for you to fail. If you had to face that sort of same schedule, and I think that was rough. And you could see where the season was going to really run into some problems at that point in time. Not this year, though. Don't have an equivalency to it this year. You can't wait until Jason or Shaheed burns one for 2 touchdowns when we play the Eagles. Let's go. Let's go. Yeah, Reek had a definite meltdown at the end of that Niner game in week 1. My goodness. The only idle thing about my silly old vet is the transmission. I would never trade it for a Cybertruck, nor would I. Not a vet. Corey, and Mike is being delusional about his quarterback. Why is it a good deal for the Cardinals when you think he's going to be benched? I don't get far in the chat, and I wasn't getting far with the roundtable on this one. I feel like I'm a little bit on my island of outlook towards the Cardinal situation. I sort of feel like Jesse and Jake are very pro Cardinals and what they're doing in their approach. And I'm over here going, man, things seem to be organizationally broken and wrong and off. And there's a lot of evidence for this. And it doesn't mean to me then that they're on the precipice of turning themselves into a winner. The Brissett contract is a ridiculous one. The Cardinals spending more, folks, in the year where the Cardinals are tanking, just lay this over the top of your brain. In the year where the Cardinals are obviously tanking, they are spending and allotting more money to the quarterback position than anybody else in this division. And you have an MVP quarterback in this division. That's not good. Who the F were they negotiating against? What was Jacoby going to do? What did they think Jacoby's going to do under this new contract? And then they threw incentives in on top of it. So now when he goes up the line of scrimmage and he has control to change the play, maybe he's got to hit passing yard markers. Maybe he's trying to hit completion percentage markers. Maybe he's hitting, touchdown markers. Now I'm on the goal line, got to run. Would be a touchdown for a run. I'm going to change it to a pass. Incompletion. Yeah, I think with Mike, there's a desperation at play for the Cardinals to be good. And they've been bad for a long period of time. And I think it's understandable because Mike's not had a winner there ever. And that's going to do funny things to a fan base. But when I push back, it's pushing back out of love to say, you guys want to be good. You want to turn this around, then you got to stop making stupid decisions. You're not getting to a championships on the back of multiple dumb choices. And unfortunately, with the Cardinal fan base at times in this, I think that there's a bit of this where they're so hungry for the winning that they're getting lost on that point. And the organization's getting lost on that point. That money that's going to Brissett, that's money to be rolled over to next year. I'll give you $2 more million this year, Brissett, and then that's it. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're going to hold in? You're going to ask us to force your hand in a trade? We're not doing it. So you want to show up at camp or you want to play this stupid game? There's no leverage. He had no leverage in the situation. He started 11 games for you. He went 1-11 in those games. Yeah, but it wasn't his fault. It was kind of the defense. Sure. Okay. That's convenient. 1-10 in your 11 games started, and none of it was my fault though. I was unbelievable. I think some of the fault probably landed at your lap a little bit there. Yeah, I don't like the deal for the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals situation, the way they're looking at things is there's this, rather than lean into the tank, there's this sort of pulling it back thing to, yeah, but we got to have fans get excited about something for this year. I mean, we can't get them excited for Gardner Minshew. I can't get them excited for drafting a right tackle in the first round. Let's get a fancy running back. Let's get him something splashy to look at. And that's driving some of their process right now with 100% certainty. And that is part of why they will never win. That is why you fail. And the second that you realize it will be the second that the Cardinals finally take a step towards moving in the direction of trying to become a winner. But it's going to take a time. It looks like it's still going to take quite a bit of time. Yeah, I just don't see what Mike's got with the Brissett thing. It speaks to me of less about, I have this ultimate faith and confidence in Brissett and like, well, what else do we got? Well, what else are we going to do? Well, what else am I going to watch if not Brissett? Like, well, that's not a spirit driving you towards greatness. That's not a spirit towards driving you to seeing good football. You want to reinforce yourself in crappy football? You want to sacrifice from the 2027 salary cap, which is what this does. You want to cut $10 million off 2027 salary cap for a season you have no hope of making the playoffs? I can't understand it. Yeah, I see Minshew. I mean, to me too, it's like the thinking on this goes, Brian, that, well, Brissett's definitely better than Minshew. How much? If I give Minshew 50 passing attempts like Brissett was getting for the Cardinals last year in every game because they're playing from behind, Minshew can't throw for 300 yards in similar conditions? I mean, Brissett might be a little better, but I don't think he's substantially better. Kendrick's Brandon, do you think the Cardinals should sign Jake Paul? No, definitely not. Though they're trying to get some eyeballs on the team, Kendrick. So, I mean, when you're leaning into this direction of things, how do we just get eyeballs? Like, we've completely made our peace. We'll never be a winner. How can we make ourselves fun to watch? How can we make ourselves enjoyable for the eyeballs, at least? Yeah, it'll be a losing squad, but it'll be fun how we get there. Okay. Eesh. It's gotten dark. Yeah, 6-3 to 7-7, man. That gauntlet was just crazy. Daddy Kane in the house. What's up, Daddy Kane? I can't stick around for the full live stream, but sending love to my fellow Hawks nesters. Go Hawks. Keep up the great work, Brandon, my brother from another mother. Thank you, my man. It's good to see Mr. Kane in the house. Hope you're having a good day. With the Cardinals, the first thing you hear from their camp is Beck having accuracy issues. What a surprise. They should lock in their tank to get a quarterback first overall. Yeah, with Beck, it's the triple dip with Beck. You not only get a lack of mobility, a lack of arm strength, but then a lack of accuracy. It is the trifecta. As long as he's throwing the ball within 7 yards of the line of scrimmage, he can put it wherever he wants to put it. Once you extend him past 7 yards past the line of scrimmage, it's a roll of the dice at that point where that thing's going. And it's not getting there very fast. Yeah, Riley is a gunner. I was mentioning earlier on this, dude. Remember last year, you used Brandon Peely and you used Mike Morris as gunner. Remember, Brandon Peely actually had a forced fumble coming down on a gunner and ripping it out. And it just that you used to have the players back here on kickoffs. They used to be way back here, and the kickoff would come all the way down there to reach the blockers. Now you're going from here to here. And so you can bring actual defensive linemen on the field now because they're only going to have to run 15 yards, 20 yards at the most. I'd love to add Clowney, Micah. Sounds like he's in Cleveland visiting today right now. Corey says, yeah, I'll take an elite O-line over an elite running back any day, Brando. Yeah, me too, especially because they could have traded back. And I will go to my grave on this last draft in believing that the Cardinals had offers to move back off of 3, but they weren't getting what was traditionally what you would tend to get with the number 3 overall pick to move back to 7, 8, 9. And then they're going, well, we're not getting our extra 2027 first round pick. Well, that pisses us off. I don't want just a second and third round pick in this year's draft to move back to 8. Tough. You get what you can get. And making Love the pick is not the right one to go there. Moving back, take Francis Maui-Noah, get your extra second, third round picks, come back, get Chase Basantis in the second round. You put Maui-Noah and Chase Basantis on that offensive line, additional third round pick thrown on top since you're going to toss the other third round pick you had to the wind with Carson Beck. Now you get that other third round pick to maybe even reinforce Mo. Hell, maybe even another offensive lineman at that point. Now you're starting to make something happen. Now you're starting to do something that's a little exciting here, especially when you already have 3 backs on the roster as it is. So I'm the same way, man. I think Love's going to be, early on in his time, at least, they're going to be having some struggles. Not that he won't be productive, but just that taking him number 3 overall, you ain't getting the most out of him. It'll be similar to the Saquon Barkley situation with the New York Giants on his first run. Bidwells do suck. Cope says, why not have the Cardinals draft a tackle this year knowing you're drafting a quarterback in 27? Bingo. And what do I always hammer about this stuff? I say, if you're going to get a quarterback, set the conditions ahead of the quarterback. Don't start putting the conditions together then when the quarterback's there. And while a running back can be helpful for a quarterback, it's not as helpful as a great offensive line. That's much more beneficial. So you're picking up what I'm putting down. You go in this last draft, you move back to 9, you can Maui Noah, Chase Basantes, extra third round pick. You come back now to next year, you got Paris Johnson, Basantes, Francis Maui Noah, Froholt, and if you can just take care of the left guard, Samola might be the guy that they signed in free agency who can become that guy, but even if not him, get that solidified. And now you're bringing in a rookie quarterback to a solidified offensive line. Like, that's the kind of conditions you want to put that guy into to allow him to have some of that early initial success. Exactly. That's right. Saquon and Barkley Giants all over again. Donald's not looking at coming back cheap space. If he was, they'd already have this deal done. It's a sticky one because he's on the hook for $30 million on their cap right now if he just comes back as is. I'm guessing there's going to be some void year money buried somewhere. Yeah, I'm ready for Jake Paul to go away too, Brian. Goodness. I'm done with that. I'm done with a couple people I can not hear about ever again, and that'd be all right. Micah says Niners want to sign Debo, but they already owe him $16 million from his last contract in Santa Clara, which is dead money. This might be the definition of insanity. They love going back to the old, don't they, man? Just one of a variety of things that they do that leaves you sort of scratching your head, where they just kind of, the old is always the way. Just keep recycling the old. It'll somehow work again like it once did. That's their methodology and approach. I don't get it either. It leaves me scratching my head, but they're committed to it. You got to give them that. Beck's a career backup. That's it. And probably a low end one at that. 100%. I mean, if I'm going to back up like a career backup like him, at least give me a guy with some juice in his legs. Like I can run some RPO stuff. I can simplify the offense down, but he'll make some plays with the legs here and there. Give me at least that guy. Don't give me the guy that both is missing arm strength and missing mobility. What are we doing here? That's it. As much as I hate the Love pick, number 3 overall pick, I might hate the Beck pick in the 3rd round even more. You talk about low imagination. Like, we're going to draft a career backup in the 3rd round. What? What are you doing? Reach B, exactly B. Yeah. I mean, this is the thing too, is I don't have to guess about this. My team did this. My team a couple of years ago didn't move Russell Wilson and say, let's go get now a top 10 running back for them. They like, okay, Abraham Lucas, Charles Cross, you invested the offensive line, and it's look what it's done for us. Look what it did for the team last year. And all of this that I say to the Cardinals on this, and I say this at times with like, look at the Niners situation with $79 million in cap space. It's like, I always say this stuff as not being a hater as a Hawk fan, looking at the Cardinals, or a hater looking at the Niners as a Hawk fan. Like, I hate that organization, so let me talk trash about them. I say it from the perspective of, if I was a Niner fan, if I was a Cardinal fan, this stuff would piss me off. Like, I would be so annoyed how you keep making the same mistakes. We're going to make mistakes. Don't make the same mistakes. Learn lessons. Go, oh, ow, the stove is hot. I'm not going to stick my face on it. I just burnt my finger. I'm not putting my eyeballs right to the heater now. But some of these organizations can't seem to help themselves. Ow. Ow. Ah, God, I burned half my face. How could I have known that was going to occur? It's melting. I mean, who would have ever have known that this could have happened? Who could have ever have predicted that this kind of, I'm going to be disfigured for years? Yes. Learn your lessons. Bidwells are definitely in the conversation for worst owners. I think Mike sealed it for me a couple of years ago when he said that they're using some of that profit margin to go buy a private jet. Like the Bidwell bought a private jet. And when you just sort of start to think about it, like when you look at the profit margins of the Packers that got pushed out a couple of days ago because they're public, and so we can learn about what these teams are getting profitability wise, like $500 million yearly. You come back time and time again, there's no excuses for these owners not to be spending money. But you guys got guys like Bidwell, they don't have a lot of money, and like, a couple $100 million, we can go get a private jet. And we just go fly everywhere. And it's like, yeah, your team is going to be quite as strong as they could be then because of it. You could have invested a little bit more back into the team. Yeah. Yeah, get a guy absurd arm strength. Like go one way or the other. To me, you pick a lane there. You know what I mean? Like you find something you can base off of. Even like with Milrose. The thing I like about Milrose, like I don't have it's hard for a guy that's got so much rough edges like he did coming out to round those out and refine those down. But you can't teach 4.3 speed. He's got he's got a very strong arm for the position. You know, he's not weak, a powder puff arm, all that. Not at all. John Schneider learned some hard lessons, but he did learn. He did, man. It's where I've given him so much credit because I think that even before this season and what you saw this year, you're already seeing John enacting those lessons learned. And that's where I think a lot of coaches and general managers, I think they have a hard time doing that. They have a grade A approach, but if the grade A approach doesn't work, it's like a coordinator. How is your in-game adjustments? Are you a good plan A guy where those first 15 scripted plays are beautiful and then you're just falling off the cliff? Or are you a guy that can adjust with time? Oh, defense is doing this and that. We're going to do this. We're going to run that. We're going to counter that. John's definitely learned a lot of his lessons. Yes, Joe Alt has Joe Thomas potential. Yes, absolutely, or Titan. He's I had a blue chip grade on Joe Alt coming out. Notre Dame. Dude says, this is my opinion, but I can stomach a split with the Niners or Rams. I can absolutely do not want to lose to the Pats, Broncos, Chiefs, and Raiders this season. I think you get all of them. I think the Broncos game is going to be the tough one, Dune. That's the Thursday night game, and that's coming off of just playing the Niners that past Sunday. And you got to go on the road into Denver. That to me remains kind of the toughest one on the schedule as I look at it. Outside of the Rams games, of course. Gals, the Niners with their constant contract restructuring, ruining their future cap space, not picking a succinct path to go down is another story. You have to go one way or the other. Can't half-ass it. No, they're splitting the difference right now, and they're trying to have your cake and eat it too. And that's not the way this works. You got to. I say it, and I've hammered it with you guys before many times over. Teams are in one of four different states. You're rebuilding, ascending, you're stuck in purgatory, or you're elite. You're in one of those four different territories. Niners are in elite territory. May not be there for long, but when you're then in the elite territory, the thing you don't do is sit on $79 million of cap space. That's the type of thing a rebuilding team would do. But that's the Niners approach for you. We're going to be the last three players on the roster. One of your back end corners, one of your back end receivers. It's kind of hard to predict right now, C-Town, because we got to get through the preseason games and see who's kind of separating themselves. But it's also a fluid spot on the back of the roster. Whoever the last three guys are on your roster is ever changing throughout the course of the year. The only positive for the Cards, there will be good OL men early second next year. Yeah, they'll be able to invent it there. I think just the question comes then is like, do they start taking the quarterback? And now they're starting to try to get the line going at that point. And Bisonis will be a good player for them. I think he rounds out well, but I think even a Froholt is starting to, slow down a little bit. And Paris Johnson gets talked about in terms that are not quite equivalent to play on the field. Maybe they can get it figured out down the line. It all starts in the trenches. That's right. And we learned this lesson over a 10-year period, begging for John to address the offensive line. That's one of the places he learned that lesson where he said, this has gone bad for me doing this. This has been not right for me to take this approach. I've got to fix my ways. And that's where you put that double dip investment of first and third rounder in Charles Cross and Lucas. And you've come back and kept hammering it with first rounder to Zabel and a third rounder to Haynes, even if that didn't work, a fourth rounder to Bradford. You really did change your way up in a major way there. And I think it's been one of the great things of change that John's done that helped to push the Super Bowl forward. Broncos on Thursday night, short week, mile high with the elevation. I think the writing is on the wall for that week, but they still win. Ooh, love the confidence, man. That's the one that I have a hard time with, man. That thin air, especially on a short week. That's tough. The Hawks will beat the Broncos, says John. Mike will have them coached up. I can see it, man. I definitely could see it. I think the Broncos are going to be tough. It's that mile high that's just got me as much on the short week, I guess. The part that's kind of stuck in my brain a bit on that one. When is the Broncos game? I think it's week 5. It seems back in the AFC days, the Hawks were always playing Denver in late December. It was, yeah. It would. Some of that was the NFL at the time trying to put those, like they do even here, like the Rams at the end of the year, where they want to have the teams playing each other in the division at the end of the season, ideally. But it did seem like we always had to play Denver in Mile High in late winter. That always seemed to be the case. The air was frothing and yeah. Though I will say, some will say that maybe even it's harder to play in that mile high air when it's early on in the season and it's still a little bit warm. Brian says John Schneider's draft and develop strategy with the O-line is proving to be the answer. Yes, sir. He figured it out. Taker, thank you for the $5 donation, Taker. What's your take on Puka? I wonder how good a season he will have. Will problems with him and LA's left tackle plague their season, and can we take advantage? Well, it's a game that the Rams are playing with these 4 guys on the roster that are due contract extensions, and no man is more due a contract extension than Puka Nacua. He had a pretty crazy offseason, which is definitely impeded his ability to get that extension done. But he also has an insane level of production since he's walked in there with the Rams in order to accommodate that contract, especially considering that he's on a day 3 contract. So he has not been paid yet at all. And so they seem to feel like they're going to be able to push him off on this and make him wait. From the Rams' perspective, I think their ideal on this is that they get another great season of Puka and that they then franchise and trade Puka after this season in order to get the other contracts done. The Kobe Turners, the Avilias, the Young. We want to get those deals done so you become the expendable option. But we want to get that final, we're going for it year of Super Bowl before we do that. That's why I say this is kind of a cute game where it's like Puka's not supposed to then anticipate that's a little bit of what you're doing in your approach. Maybe he's okay with it because he knows he gets paid after this. But that's the part where it's hard to predict if that's going to remain calm waters, because stuff starts to get a little stressful from a Puka standpoint of if you're not producing, if you come out and things aren't cooking along as normal, it's like, okay, I didn't get paid. I should have gotten paid. Now I'm not going to get paid as much. And that's why, again, you don't want to play this game. You want to get these kind of contracts done out ahead of time. You want to be far ahead of it. You don't want to be through year 4 of these deals and trying to then scramble to figure all of them out. The left tackle situation is hard to predict. The NFL is very arbitrary about whether or not they're going to decide to penalize guys or not. It's hard to tell what's going to happen with that. I would estimate, because I think he is a repeat offender, he's going to get a 6-game suspension. When that clicks in exactly is kind of hard to say. They're very random with this. It's not always like, well, you expect the first game of the season and be like, oh, it's week 4. Let him know now. NFL can kind of be like that at times. Cope, smash that like button. All I know is I'm not the only one who just pressed it 40 minutes in. Well, thank you for that, Cope. Please do if you guys get a chance. I know I ask often, but Cope is right. you hit that like button, it helps out this channel a lot with pushing this channel out on the algorithm. YouTube is having as hard a time as ever getting these kind of shows out on the algorithm. It's very hard, but if you hit that like button, it pushes it out there and helps channels like mine grow in a major way. Appreciate you for that. Well, the Titans and the Rams don't have any elite offensive linemen, but their offense is set up with schemes of quick release like 80s 49er Walsh offenses. Yeah, I mean, it's you do have, I would say, Oiler Titan top 10 level play of left tackle out of Alaric Jackson last year. You had top 10 level guard play out of Steve Avila last year. When Dotson is out there, he's very close to a top 10 level right guard. I think there's definitely some minor questions more in there to the right tackle and center for sure. But they do have some strength there around otherwise. Still, to your point, it is an offense that's built on getting the ball in their playmakers' hands and letting them get to work. HHG, who came up with that expression? Can't eat your cake and have it too. I know what it means, but it's just stupid. If I can't eat it, then I don't want it. The one that makes it is to serve it, I guess. There's something within that. Yeah, altitude sickness is no joke. It's really hard when you're going out like that, and it takes weeks to kind of acclimate to it. And even if you're in great shape, it sometimes doesn't matter. And especially if it's a short week and your body's already tired, that's just to me a one that's going to be a very hard game to overcome beyond just the X's and O's and the matchups. I'm curious about running back too there, Dogzilla, especially the McIntosh out now. Wonder if Jarcadia Wright's kind of stepped up a bit. Week 6, we play Denver? My bad. Week 6. I'm thinking 13 to 15 wins for the Hawks, 10 to 13 wins for the Rams, and 6 to 10 wins for the Niners. I've got in about the same place. I got 13, 12, 10, 11, something like that, somewhere in that neighborhood. But I'm almost exactly about the same spot there, Micah. In 2024, the Rams and Broncos were like 9 or 10 win teams. So team from 2012 that was good, could jump, could be a scary team. No one is expecting. Who did I have? Trevor. Let me see here. So I think we had. So I had the Ravens and I had the Cowboys getting into the playoffs. Oiler Titan from of those teams kind of that would make that jump. Telios Vita wants out of Tampa Bay. What would Snyder go after him and what would be the cost? You're probably going to have to do like a second and Riley Mills. Something like that would probably get it done. But there's no chance this trade happens. And I'd rarely tell you guys there's no chance, but I think there's like a 1% chance. You're lock stocked at the position. You're not going to want to give up Riley Mills. You got to pay him a new contract extension. You're right now in the midst of still just trying to figure out how you get the extension done for Leonard Williams. That's more of the, that takes more of the priority. So you just kind of come back around to it. Just doesn't align. You don't have the need. You don't want to have to give this guy the new money. He's worth it, but just you don't have as much of the need. It's one of the stronger positions on your football team, defensive tackle, strong and deep. Dude, who are the guys we should be mindful of in terms of preserving their bodies? I'm thinking of Julian, Ernest, or even Nick, or am I thinking of unwarranted manner here? I mean, to a degree, there is a level of it with the vets that you're always going to do vet rest day, and you're going to try to, manage that stuff as much as you can. I think with Eamon Wari, you're less going to be there with the younger players. I think it's more of the guys like Leonard Williams and DeMarcus Lawrence and the Uchenna Nwosus, where you're just going to be mindful of restricting their snap counts and not putting too much on them. Factoring in the age is a part of it. And the team's done a great job of that. So I'd expect them to do more, but those would be more of the guys you probably have to manage. Usually the youngsters, you can go a little bit more full tilt. Gaming Taco says, Brando, are you going to training camp this year with the boys? I had thought about it, but it ended up coming down for me, man. The budget just did not allow it. The cost is the last couple of training camps just keeps going up and up and up to travel from airfare to rental cars to just the hotels. It was going to be like a $1,500 to $2,000 trip for me to pull it off. And it gets tough with training camp too, because Seattle doesn't just stack the training camp days 1, 2, 3. It's like you got Monday, and then it'll be a Wednesday, and then it'll be a Friday, and so you have to be there for sort of the full week to just see like 3 practices. And so I just couldn't validate it this year. Just didn't quite have the scratch this year to rub together to make it go at that price. Wanted to. I'm going to try to save up for next year, but couldn't quite pull it off. If there's a NFL dark horse I'd bet on, the Eagles, I could see them. They're always dangerous, man. Always. Well, Titans, should the Cardinals have taken Joe Alt in 2024, pick 4 instead of Marv? Back in 96, I wanted the Cards to take Ogden out of UCLA over Simeon Rice, who was fine. Had Ogden as the best player in the NFL draft. I think you're touching upon a very good point here. When I have a tackle that is a blue chip prospect, understanding that from my perspective, other Titan, on average, I probably give out 4, 5 blue chip grades a draft. 4 or 5. That's it. This next draft, I'll probably have 7 or 8. I was looking at NFL drafts and scouting at the time you're talking about in 96. I was at that time starting to get into that geekier place and looking at drafts. Aware of Simeon, aware of Ogden. Simeon was a very good player coming out, a guy that's ending up as a borderline Hall of Famer as far as the career he had. But Ogden was a different dude. Ogden was part of the Orlando Pace, Walter Jones draft classes in that mix where these guys are as clean a tackle prospects as you will find. And yes, Joe Alt fitted into that way. It's tough with Marv because my look of Marv was that he was a blue chip prospect as well. But could you have made the argument that there was a need there? Maybe. This one gets tough, Oiler Titan, because they had Paris Johnson there. So now do you take Joe Alt and move him out to right tackle, which is what the Chargers have essentially done with him? I don't know if that's what I wanted to do with Joe Alt out of Notre Dame. I think I wanted to keep him more as a left tackle. This is a little bit like the Penny Sewell thing coming out of Oregon, where the Lions moved Penny Sewell to right tackle. I want Penny Sewell at left tackle. He can be fine at right tackle. He might even be dominant over right tackle, but he will be at his best at left tackle. And that's the part that would have been hard on the Alt pick when you combo it with Marvin. I had a blue chip grade on Oiler Titan, and then you had a big need at wide receiver from the Cardinal perspective too. So, need and value were in alignment. You had the left tackle position kind of already taken care of. I wouldn't have hated them taking Alt, and it would have been a scary proposition, taking Alt, moving to right tackle. Maybe that would have been scarier than even taking Marvin, but I understand their approach with that particular one. But I was with you on the Simeon Rice-Ogden situation. I would have taken Ogden over Rice too. Kind of at the time we were just starting to understand, and the NFL was just starting to understand the value of a franchise left tackle, the need of it. It was kind of the post Lawrence Taylor years where like this becomes now something that's a necessity for your offense rather than just kind of nice to have. Stop saying Mills. These are Mills. They're still not in the best cap situation being New Orleans, but it's better than it's been, that's for sure. Brian Brees went down today for the Saints. Torn ACL. Green Earth, when will we see a return of the air raid, college-style spread offense in the NFL? It's not going to occur until you get teams that are forced to bring safeties into the box to stop the run. You got to get the defenses out of the cover 2 shell. And the only way to get them out of the cover 2 shell is to run the ball so damn well that you force extra resources to stop the run. And that's what, of course, brought about the air raid in the first place, is that running was more at the forefront. Teams started to get more pass-centric in the 2010s. Teams were starting to kind of run a little bit away from more of the cover 2. It was becoming more of the cover 3, cover 1 kind of stuff of the Carroll era. Well, I get to more cover 1. I got a single high safety. I've got more of an ability now to spread things out and kind of attack in that manner. So part of the evolution of football we'll eventually get to the point where we're right in the stretch of it where everything's a little bit more about running the football, a little bit less passing, a little bit more base concepts offensively. Defenses will start to amp up for that and we'll drive more back into base. And then eventually The safety will come up and help up in the box consistently, team by team, and then that will drive back to spread. How much a plane ticket? Oh, it was like $550, $600, something like that. But then, hotel stay is going to be like $700-800, and then the rental car is going to be $500, food and all that. Like, just tough, man. There's not been a benefit to either. It's like I've gone back and looked at the training camp coverage that I've done, and we never got a bump in doing the training camp coverage as far as extra subs or extra viewership from just going live from home. It should be just take his car up 5 and live in it for a week. He'll be in Seattle and no one will question it. That's true. Joe Alt was the top guard in the draft. No. Joe Alt was a tackle at Notre Dame. My man's 6'7". He ain't playing guard. Running back rotation gaming taco will be Jadarian Price and Wilson as your early down backs, splitting between the carries there. And then George Holani will be your third down back. I think it'll go that way. I'm not high on Marvin. I understand. He's got some stuff he's got to get through. Tough luck for Breeze, man. And that's a huge loss to a Saints team. I see some of you talking about being kind of hyped up of what the Saints are doing. And I think rightfully so. I think that they've started to kind of build things around in the right direction. But that Brees loss is no minor hit there. This team that lost to Mario Davis this offseason. Cameron Jordan is like 37 years old. It's going to be kind of all on Chase Young's back to kind of carry the day on that defensive line. Flory sounds great, dude. He's well spoken and seems like a smart dude based on what we've heard so far. Catalyst, that sucks. Brees hasn't hit that upside yet. He's liability against the run. He was kind of getting there last year, man. He was starting to kind of show some stuff up, but maybe not be fully realized. But he was starting to get on his way. Those Clemson defenders, Catalyst, you got to give him like 2-3 years. Look at Trenton Simpson out there in Baltimore. Got to give him that little extra time, man. They're not the hungriest, chomping in at the bit type of group. They got to go at their own speed. Gaming Taco Brando, what have you seen or heard about the cornerback room so far in training camp? Bud Clark's already get a pick 6, showing off some of that nose for the ball. Early returns on Julian Neal is that he's looked pretty good. They're controlling the situation highly at this point. They've not gotten into pads yet. The cornerbacks are not jumping or making plays on the ball in practice. So it's going to be a little bit hard of assessing much on the cornerback room when that's the case. Got to let a little bit more of this kind of play out. Sounds like Dansby had a pick as well, 7th round kid that we took. So that part's been cool, but not a lot aside from that. Thanks again. See y'all next time. Go Hawks, my man. Brees, I heard the same for scored in the Panthers. Yeah, Panthers have also been struck a little bit by the injury front of things already out the gate. They've got Nick Gordon is going to be out for the year. That's a huge loss for them too. I mean, another guy just really came on last year. He was popping off the tape and prepping up for the Panthers game and looking at them as we were late in the season. I mean, he was really coming along. It's tough. It's tough because these are teams in Panthers and in Saints that are teams that are not necessarily built with a lot of depth, that they need the front line to carry things a bit. And these young players on that front line, especially. Panthers also, I've heard we had Mitchell Evans went down on to the card a couple days ago too. Yeah, Nick Orson, tough for him. Feed me. I'd hope for him. Feed me. Kalani already visiting teams. Hopefully one of them in Seattle. I hope as well. Can't imagine he wants to go back to Cleveland. That would be just simply they're paying him the most penny. Catalyst, I did notice the Saints were actually a good run defense last year, which I had as the worst going into 2025. Kind of a strange turnaround. Yeah. You got some of the age there, guys like Chase Young, who, look, he's been a guy for a while, has traditionally just been like, I'll play the run as I have to. I'm here to rush the passer. And so that kind of turnaround last year was pretty cool from them to get that going in that direction of things. Hopefully they can still keep building on it, even losing Brian like they have. But you're on a Catalyst. I think the combination of DeMario Davis, top 100 player, linchpin of that defense gone, Jordan getting up to now 37 years old, you're going to have to restrict his snap count, and then Brees being out. You're hoping for the Saints team or you're thinking that Saints team is going to be that team to take the division this year. And I don't know. Of course, we got the Panthers getting injuries to key guys too. And then you've got maybe potentially Tampa Bay trade and Vita Vea. I mean, maybe this will be just like who can suck the least as to who wins that division. Yeah, he's looking really good at camp this year right now, Mike. And what we expected, you give the guy an offseason to work with Sam. Everything we've heard about them going back to OTAs is these guys are on much more of the same page. You can feel the connection. The chemistry's on point. What we expected, but still good to see nonetheless. Come home, Clowney. Come home, Jadeveon. Come win a chip, man. You've made hundreds of millions of dollars in your career. You've had a great career. You know, you don't apologize to nobody for what you've done. Now put the cherry on top. Cement it up. Come back to the best defense for your skill set. Come back to a snap count that's not going to ask you to have to play too many snaps to be part of a championship roster. Just be another leader in this locker room. Come on. Come on. Yeah, NFC South's up for grabs, man. I like what the Saints are doing. Don't get me wrong, Kyle. I do. And Jordan Tyson, I think, is going to fit really well in there with Olave. The offensive line's pretty solid. They may have to score 40 points a game as it's kind of set up. Clowney would be the perfect older player. If it's perfectly in the rotation, it might come for cheap if he's hunting for that ring. Kind of what I'm counting on. You don't have to trade for him. Give him the 1-year, $4 million contract. Let him fit into the rotation. You've got the reinforcement for injury if that should occur. It peels back the potential need to go make the trade deadline deal for another edge at that time. So one less thing you have to be kind of paying attention to. I'd like it. Go, Brando, this liquor's hitting me hard. I may fall asleep before the stream's done. We're wrapping up here, so I think we'll probably catch you just at the end. Go Breeze, Clowney would tie up loose ends and make us forget about overpaying for Max. That's it. You're picking up what I'm putting down, Cole Breeze, which is that it just sort of frees you up. It costs very little. All it does is a little bit of some cap space is all it's going to cost to reinforce this thing, to give you an insurance policy. Everybody likes an insurance policy. It gives you the warm and fuzzies. It makes you feel like nothing's going to go horrible. There's no possibility of the horrible outcome. Every hour is happy hour when you're a Hawks fan, especially as Hawk champion. You know what I mean? Especially as the Hawks champion. We're tied in both Texas A&M Aggies, Gordon and Stewart, are out with injuries. Should Myles Garrett and Von Miller be worried? It's getting a little dicey for the A&M boys, that's for sure. And really unfortunate. So those are two guys that I looked at for my team and liked both of their tape coming out. You could see on both of them how they were physically were very impressive. They just had to advance a little bit of the technical side of things. Unfortunate. Really, really unfortunate. Like Clowney come back so he can get his Eagles revenge game. Let's go. Let's go. Since that Wentz injury, I remember the Wentz injury. That was tough. That was real tough. All right, well, we will wrap it up on that note. 3 hours in the books today, folks. Another good stream in with you guys. Big shout out to all of the donators today on the channel. Taker, Banker, me with a $200 donation. Get out of here. Thank you for that. Me, you're awesome. We got Feed Me, Banker Elpraise, Randall, and 206 Remy, along with HHG and Matthew, longtime supporters of the channel as members of the channel. I really thank you guys for watching today. Training camp in full swing here, and everything is going good, just like we like. Everybody likes exciting news, but sometimes at the start of training camp, through July, through June, a couple weeks in training camp, you want nothing to just calm waters. Guys out there put in the work, intense practices, making progress, no injuries, and that's just what we've gotten so from your Seahawks. No contractual disputes, nobody pissing and moaning, no guys wondering about playing time. Everybody just doing their job, doing it right, working hard, and this is what we want. So everything's been good. Unfortunately, it doesn't always give us as much to talk about, though we found plenty today to discuss. But the Seattle Seahawks team is well situated and suited here for this upcoming season, and things have motored through this offseason really ideal in that way. You've kept the guys that were important in-house. You've kept yourself with a lot of cap space and wiggle room for this upcoming season if you want to make moves. You've got the kind of general manager who's more than willing to make moves if he should have to any time of year. And so things really are set up well here for the Seattle Seahawks team, and you should be hyped to the moon for this team to be able to take off once again here in 2026. But just in case you're not, just in case you're wondering about this Ramsey, you go, well, they made a trade for McDuffie, and then they got Garrett, and now Darnold. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, let me remind you just one more time. They are chasing us. We despite whatever the national media may be trying to tell you out there, are the champions. They can dress it up. They can speak about fluke and luck, and it's the Rams year, and they can talk all that they want to talk. It don't change that one unmitigated fact. We are the champions. The Seattle Seahawks won the championship last year. They're chasing us. So let them chase. Let them burn themselves out. Let them blow those lungs apart as they sprint as hard as they can. It's still not going to be enough. They're still going to fall just short, and it's still going to be so sweet. So you better remember. You better never forget. Don't you dare ever forget. Go Hawks.